I guess we'll go to,
How many people are we gonna hear from tonight?
hold on, we're fixing to find out.
Okay.
I don't know that, I think you're gonna allow 30 minutes for those that are for it, and 30 minutes for those that are against it.
30 minutes, right, like 3 minutes.
Yeah. I don't know how they're gonna do it.
You gotta find out how many,
Uh,
how many people.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, we're gonna do the against list first after.
After staff recommendation, we'll have a representative from Garrison Command speak, and then we will call in against, then for.
Are we ready for Sam?
Yes, sir. Well, with this, the board passed last month rules on
Conference will
the,
now be recorded. This conference is no longer being recorded. This
rules
conference
passed
will now be
on
recorded.
the public hearing for the text amendment. Just really quickly go over those. With this, in the rules that people were expected to sign up in advance for the, with the clerk. We did have people registered at the building who were taking registrations up till now. Both sides would be given an opportunity to speak to up to 30 minutes, generally conceding up to 3 minutes per person. One person someone who is in attendance could yield their time to another person. So if there is a group, they could choose a representative and allocate time to that point. But at that point, of course, this is up to the chairman's option, but those in favor and those against would have 30 minutes of time total.
Well, I think we want to give everybody that wants to speak an opportunity to speak. But at the same time, I don't want to see 15 people saying the same thing from the same group. Like the homeowners association, for example, I would think that they would have maybe one representative to speak for them as opposed to a dozen. I don't know that, but that would be my recommendation.
But they don't have a 30 minutes each, right? For and
No.
against, right?
Each side, yeah.
So we gotta keep track of the minutes.
Yes.
Who's gonna keep the time?
Keep the time, so we don't have to.
Lady right in the corner, she's going to keep the time for each person.
Lady down there.
We do have, and she's our children's librarian. So we have, at the beginning of the meeting, we did have 9 people who were registered to speak in opposition. We had 4 people registered to speak in favor of the meeting. So I'm assuming to start with, we'd do with the staff recommendation. We have
But if you had
Chad
9,
Essex, who's our hired as county attorney to provide legal service on this, as well as Sam Cribb, chairman of the zoning board here.
well, if you had 9 to sign up for it, then give them 3 minutes each, and
Yes, sir.
that would be my agreeable with everybody.
Anybody sign up since they got here for doing that, or did we allow them?
We allowed it until we went into, basically until closed session. I'll just confirm that if there is a 10th member who signed up.
We ready?
But yeah,
Well, are we ready for this gentleman to speak?
yes, sir.
Welcome, Mr. Creel.
Is this where we want to put off the vote until next Wednesday, right?
Yes, sir.
Jason, do they have to take an oath?
No, this is just a public hearing, it's not. We made plans on there and recommended the board commission to consider incorporating one of the following revisions to proposed text amendment. 3 revisions, you want me to read them or can you already, 1, 2, and 3?
The revisions were in your packet.
I'm going to review them as part of my presentation, if that's helpful. And then,
I got it.
Sam, if they have any questions about anything else, planning board consider, I think it's detailed.
Which is it now? What's he doing?
On top of that, this
What are they
thing, I'm
doing
gonna
now?
recommend the board
They're just gonna
commission
go over the
consider
recommendation
the
from
following
this
revisions.
meeting.
The 4 revisions.
We're going to go over the recommendation from the zoning.
I think you already know.
It's all the same.
We've got it.
Sam, I apologize if I don't understand it. Increase the height requirement for bulletproof tax stop. Did you give a recommended height requirement?
Yep.
What was that? That's 15 feet.
I think it's 15 feet, if I'm not mistaken. And then they'll decrease the structure height, which calls for 100 feet, get 100 feet. So,
I don't have a copy of it.
The structure height will reduce to 50.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have a copy of
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Okay. No, it's in your agenda packet. It's in the agenda packet.
Anybody else got any questions?
It's okay. If we hear from Mr. S, then we may, you may have a question you have.
Be fine.
This here.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Commissioners. Again, my name is Chad Essay, counsel on Board of School, and serve as outside counsel to the county and been working with staff and county attorney regarding this proposed text change. Let me start by saying over the past few months, staff had identified the need to define and to provide define uses related to training activities and to place them in zoning districts and provide for more objective requirements governing those uses. Generally, the initial draft of the text change, let me just start at a high level and then we can get granular to the extent we need to. But so there's 2 types of training facilities under this text change. You have combat training facilities, you have tactical training facilities, and both of those uses are defined. The more intense use, which is a combat training facility, would only be allowed in the heavy industrial zoning district if it requires the issuance of a conditional use permit. The lesser intense use, which is a tactical training facility, would be allowed without a conditional use permit in all commercial and industrial zoning districts. That would include neighborhood commercial, highway commercial, light industrial, and heavy industrial, but would be subject to certain objective standards that regulate the minimum acreage that has to be on a site, setbacks from property lines, certain buffering requirements, certain noise limitations, which I'll get into more detail in just a second. So, as I said, a draft of this was presented to the Planning and Zoning Board at its July 15th meeting. The board agreed to initiate it and authorize its review at the July 29th meeting. At the July 29th meeting, they did consider it and they made a recommendation to the commissioners for approval, although there were some technical difficulties that night is relating to audio of those who were trying to listen in. And there was some concerns expressed about not having the opportunity to speak and provide public comment on that. So as a result, it was decided to bring it back to the Planning and Zoning Board at its regular meeting in October 19th. And we allowed for written comments to be submitted to the Planning Board with their planning packets prior to the meeting. So as Mr. Cribb noted, this was reviewed at the Planning and Zoning Board's August 19th meeting, and they provided their written recommendation, which is included in your packet under, I believe, the attachment 1, which I think Mr. Cribb was referring to that you guys are looking at. So as a part of that written recommendation, they recommended that the text change be approved, but that the county commissioners consider one of the following revisions: that technical training facility be removed from the list of permitted uses by right in the neighborhood commercial that they're required, or that you require issuance of a conditional use permit for that use in the neighborhood commercial district, or that you consider adding some additional regulations if that use is going to be allowed in a commercial district. They also had some other recommendations that are outlined in that recommendation regarding, that you just mentioned, Mr. Gibson, regarding the height of the backstop and the combat training facility, structure height for both uses, further definition of some of the buffer requirements, and some annual reporting as it relates to the number of days that the use is operated for technical training facilities. So, and just to back up, and I want to talk about, we have incorporated some of the recommendations in a revised text change that was in your packet under attachment 2. And I'll go over those in just a second, but before I do, I just want to go back. So, as it relates to the differences between the two uses, so the combat training facility is a use that has live fire. It's an intense use with live fire. It can be operated 365 days a year, and it's more military training type activities as defined in that use. That's why we kept that. That's why staff proposed keeping that as a conditional use in the heavy industrial zoning district. Tactical training facilities, however, are less intense. There's not live fire, not live ammunitions that are fired as defined. It can only be operated 180 days out of the year, so essentially half the year. And of those, only 60 of those days can you have simulated fire. So you're putting limitations on objective limitations that staff can enforce on that use. You're not allowing the live ammunition. In addition, in the tactical training facility objective requirements, there's certain decibel limitations that have to be observed at the property line of 80 decibels. So those are some of the things that, and there's a minimum 30-acre requirements for both of those uses. So those are some of the things that were part of the initial text change. Looking at the changes that were made after the Planning and Zoning Board made its recommendation under attachment 2, I'll just run through this quickly, and again, I'm happy to answer any questions. One of the things that was clarified in the text change was that for both uses is that the any sort of either live fire in the combat training facility or any simulated fire must be only done by law enforcement, military, or federal agency groups and contractors or agents working on behalf of those. So there were some comments that came out about, can militia groups go up and set these things up, and so wanted to address that comment that we're talking about folks that are working with law enforcement, military groups or federal agency groups. And that's for both uses. In the combat training facilities and the objective requirements, you'll look under sub C of 14A11. We've done this in both of the uses. It was language that said, to the extent practical, you should retain existing vegetation within the first 100 foot of the perimeter. And we've tightened that up to say, any vegetation that's within that area is to be maintained, so that if you have a nice, healthy tree system or good buffer that's there, within that first 100 feet, it should be retained and kept. In addition, we made some clarifying changes on the buffering. We're in the combat training facilities. You would have a minimum 100-foot wide, dense evergreen vegetated buffer along the perimeter of the property to create a reasonable visual screen. That was not a part of the tactical training facility, but you'll see that was added in subsection D under 14A21, so that tactical training facilities also would have a 100-foot wide, dense evergreen vegetated buffer along the property lines for anything containing existing residential, commercial, or industrial uses. So that was added to the objective requirements that would have to be satisfied by someone operating a tactical training facility. You will see that in both of the regulations for both uses, building structure heights was reduced from 100 feet to 50 feet. And that was, again, part of some of the comments and recommendations that came. There was some comments that came in about not having any firing activities, whether it's live fire or simulated fire on certain holidays. So that was added to both uses. We also added in subsection J for tactical training facilities, we added an annual report that must be filed with the county to ensure that the facility is meeting its requirements to only operate no more than 180 days. And again, making sure that no more than 60 of those days there's any simulated fire for those tactical training facilities. So those are some of the changes that were incorporated to the text change that's before you this evening. Let me talk briefly about the reason why, from staff's perspective, requiring a conditional use permit for the more intense use in heavy industrial district, as opposed to allowing the use with certain these objective standards in the other commercial and industrial zoning districts. Staff believes that this less intense use that is operated less number of days a year and doesn't have live ammunition that is being fired, if you are setting objective standards that apply, that staff can enforce, like a 30-acre minimum requirement, vegetated buffers, noise requirements, like we have done in this, it makes it easier for staff to administer the ordinance. It makes folks looking to invest in Scotland County and to bring facilities here to understand what the requirements are and whether or not they can meet them, and not have to go through what can be a very long and arduous conditional use permitting process if you can capture some of the big mitigation things. In the case of a tactical training facility where you don't have live fire, you don't have bullets flying, and you don't have it operating potentially every single day of the year, that type of use can be mitigated through some objective standards that are applied and that would apply at the permitting level. I will say that there was I read some of the comments that were provided to the board in advance of the public hearing, referring to other ordinances that still, I think the comment was that it looked at 50 counties, that's half the counties in North Carolina, and found 5 that had defined and regulated these uses, and indicated that all of them required a conditional use permit or a special use permit, same thing, same permit. I looked at those. One of them, Davie County, actually does not require a conditional use permit or special use permit. They have objective requirements that they have. I will note that this proposed text change seemed to be in line with those as far as minimum acreage. We were actually a little higher than some. Some had 25 as a minimum acreage. Others had some in the 40 range. But I will say that none of those ordinances looked at, hey, what are these? They've had it all under one use. So they were dealing with live fire situations in those ordinances where they were regulating real bullets coming out of guns and being shot on property. And so they didn't look at, okay, are there 2 different types of uses here where we're talking about? Are we talking about uses that, again, have live fire or operating potentially every day of the year? Or are we looking at something less intense that is operating a fraction of the year that has not live fire, and treating them perhaps differently in where they go and what areas they can be placed in and what the regulations are? So that's what this text change has attempted to do. And looked at, trying to put objective standards in place that provide buffering, noise reduction, minimum acreage requirements. So one point I will make is that the staff did an analysis looking at how many parcels are we talking about right now that are 30 acres in zone highway commercial, neighborhood commercial, or light industrial. They identified 9 parcels. And I'm happy to put a summary in your staff report. I'm happily answer it, and Kevin can help review those if we need to go into more detail. And I think there was a map that showed you where they were. But the point of that is that if somebody wants to do one of these, so there's only 9 properties right now where that can even be done that meets the minimum acreage requirements in those 3 districts. If somebody comes to the county board of commissioners and wants to rezone 30 acres or more of land to one of those districts, you will have the opportunity at that point to say, whoa, this use is allowed. We don't think it's an appropriate use here. And so we don't think this, you will have a point at that point to evaluate whether or not you think that piece of parcel should be rezoned to one of these districts in light of the uses that are allowed, like you do with every rezoning that you look at. Because you have general use rezoning, you look at the rezoning and say, okay, here are all the potential uses that could be done. Is this appropriate in this zoning district? So, the notion or any notion that, this is going to have wide, we're going to open up the whole county to these potential facilities without getting a conditional use permit, I don't think it's a fair characterization given the limited number of properties that currently even meet those minimum acreage requirements in our zone, those commercial or industrial zone districts. So, and I will say that I see a comment that while staff did look at those 3 zoning districts for how many there were, we didn't look at the heavy industrial zoning district. My comment to that would be, heavy industrial is where you have your most intense uses. Heavy industrial is, again, presumed to be where you put most of it, that's understand it, by the airport and in that area. And so, we didn't do an analysis of how many heavy industrial parcels are over 30 acres. We can certainly do that if the commissioner would like that information. But the point was that we're looking at where these other districts and where they are, how big they are, and how many would meet these minimum requirements to even qualify for these facilities. So, again, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has, or I can reserve questions for after. If you want to ask me some questions after you hear the public comment, happy to do that as well.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Who determines this 160 days? The government or the company that's contracting with the government? How can they determine what a facility would do if they're preparing for combat somewhere and they needed to work around the clock? Would they, the government, Fort Bragg, comply with a pre-position agreement of a certain number of days training?
If I might, if it is a military operation, Army who are out in Camp McCall on a daily basis out in the game lands, this ordinance does not apply to a direct military operation, period. This applies to a contractor who is providing services to military or some other federal agency up through a contract.
Okay, through a contract, but if they're doing it for it's gonna be for the military.
Yes.
If they needed more than that, who determines?
They would have to come back and request a variance to achieve that.
Okay, thank you. Second thing is, I have, in the last year, I experienced one of the training without live ammunition. And the soldiers came out of the woods and they took this killers at the facility that's up there now. And I can tell you, everything they use, I couldn't tell if it was live or not live with the noise it made. They were throwing things and shooting, and it wasn't live, but I don't think live would have been any more louder. It was loud, so when they say, whomever it is, they're saying they won't be using live ammunition, that doesn't mean it's not loud. I mean, it's to terrify me. And you know, there was like 6 different tactics they used at the same time. There was explosion going on and gunfire. I mean, I just want to say that I witnessed that. I'm not trying to influence anybody here. I'm just saying what I witnessed.
Normally though, Chad, and you can speak to this, I guess, blanks are normally not as loud as regular.
Well,
I mean,
I'm no expert, but I mean, and the folks from the industry will be here. I know the folks from some of the industry folks who could be here and speak to. My understanding from having spoken with folks in the industry is that the blanks are not as loud as live ammunition.
I mean, that's what I've always
Hopefully they can
heard.
address
now.
why, or if that's the case or not. I think the point that, at least from a policy standpoint, the text change is, that's the reason that we're saying you can't go over 80 decibels at the property line. And if you do, you're gonna get a notice of zoning violation, and be in zoning violation. So you're gonna have to you're gonna figure out how to make your facility operate in a way that's gonna stay below those noise thresholds. in addition to the buffering requirements that help mitigate that, of course, as well as the minimum acreage size, so you have a bigger parcel of land, you're not doing it all on one small parcel. So I think, again, the objective requirements for that tactical training facility that we built into the text change are attempting to address that issue. And, I read some of the comments. I think that a lot of that will be complaint driven, therefore means it won't be enforced. I would submit that if there's no complaints, that's a good thing. And if there's no complaints, then probably doesn't need to be a lot of enforcement. So I think all zoning is, my experience, all zoning is going to be complaint driven. And so, I think that's something for the board to consider if they consider this text change.
I think I read somewhere that this 80 decibels was about like a lawnmower cutting grass. I mean, I read that in some of this.
The report they have to do from the training, who gets that report, Gil?
So the language that we've added, and of course we can, the way we have it written now, you have an annual report that the facility operated would file with the county by January 31st, indicating how many days of that year they were operating, and how many days that they used the blank ammunition, firearms, or similar equipment. So demonstrating, and that could certainly be under penalty of perjury or however we want to do it, to say, you got to report. I mean, they keep track of those sort of things, and that they report it so that we in the county knows that they're staying under those thresholds that we've established. So that's the reason. That was the comment that came out of some of the comments of the planning board. So we added that language.
You added that to the tactical, but you didn't add it to combat.
And the reason for that is that combat doesn't have any limitations, and so combat facilities can operate as many days as they want to.
They don't have any.
Right, and that's part of another reason. Part of the reason why they've remained a conditional use in the heavy industrial district among the live ammunition and some of the other types of operations. So,
And another question, I think, and Sam, this may be to you, and you may have answered up. In your first set of 3 recommendations, one was that you remove tactical training from the list of uses permitted by right in a neighborhood commercial zone. We didn't do that one. That's not the recommendation. The second one is require the initial use permit for the neighborhood commercial. We didn't do that. Add additional regulations, tactical training is located by the right on the neighborhood. That's what those additional things that you're saying did.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that we took those 3 options, I guess you would call them menu options, that the planning board recommended that the commissioners consider it, and staff looked at it, and we said, okay, we're going to look at this 3rd option and add some additional regulations. And that's where the evergreen buffering, the 100-foot evergreen buffering, the reduction of the height, and those sorts of things were added, and then reporting and that sort of thing.
And Sam, I apologize for doing this, but I do it here. Are you okay with that option?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll make sure that my point on this is correct. This amendment, we could be doing this amendment without lawsuit, without anybody getting upset about this type of thing going on. This amendment to this zoning ordinance will serve us going forward regardless of whether DCGI lands here or we have something a year from now that wants to build similar training facility, no problem. But this just strengthens our planning and zoning ability in our part in the county to regulate these types of things.
I think that's fair. I think that, yes, I think that given
We
your
know why we're here,
great.
but while we're here, we're also accomplishing an objective that we have needed to do for some time to regulate these types of industries. I just want to make that point out. On objective requirements, I understand how they serve us. They actually are stronger in some respects than conditional use permit because they're more specific.
Yes, I think the conditional use permitting process is one that you go through and you have to demonstrate compliance with certain subjective requirements.
Per permit, it's per
permit, and you may put conditions on it, you may not. So some of these may be a part of it, it may not. So I think these objective requirements put a kind of baseline of requirements that staff can do at the site plan stage, and put some regulations on it. And then those looking to, like I said, invest in Scotland County, given the proximity to military installations, you can look at your ordinance and say, okay, I can only operate this number of days. I got to figure out how to get my decibels at 80 decibels at the property line. I got to put these buffers in. I got to set my buildings back this far. I know what I have to do and can make an assessment of whether or not I can do it.
create the universal standard
Yes.
going forward.
Yes.
Chad,
Yes, sir.
stated that there's only 3 or 4 of the land sites that have the capacity to bring on the same, we're doing, what we talk about homes. There are 3, this is 3 of them, how many boards that do have the capacity? Well, somebody's back next year.
So again, staff looked at it, there are 9 total parcels. Yeah, nine total parcels that meet the 30-acre requirement and that are currently zoned neighborhood commercial, highway commercial, or light industrial. Of those 9 facilities, two have an existing solar farm going. One of them is property that manufactures homes, has some surrounding vacant land to it. One is the facility that has got so much discussion. And then there's some remaining property on Highway 74 on Gibson Road. You should have aerials of all these properties that are in your packets. But yeah, so, and one I think has an asphalt plant operated by Hudson Paving. So the point of giving you that information is to say that if somebody's going to come do one of these facilities in those 3 zoning districts in the future, likely it's going to require rezoning that has to come before this board, and they're going to have to, you're going to have to make the decision at that time. Is this property that they want to rezone the 30 or more acres to one of those districts? Is it appropriate for this type of use? It could be a potential use subject to those standards that we have in section. Yes, sir.
But of those 8 or 9 you mentioned, there's only, what, about 5 that's available really for that, isn't it? Because of, like you mentioned, the asphalt plant and 2 or 3 solar farms and.
It might actually be only 2 or 3 that are truly like vacant sites, or don't have any existing development on. I mean, of course, it's something to redevelop, I suppose.
Anyone have any more questions for Chad or Sam?
I'll be here.
Thank you, like always. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Sam, thank you.
Sam, are you gonna stick around though, or in case we have something else? Was that?
We can find if we need to.
The next person is Justin Mitchell, Deputy Garrison Commander for Fort Bragg.
Well, folks, I'm going to be the briefest speaker tonight probably, and so I just wanted to come and Chairman, members of the board, I just wanted to come and say thank you to Scotland County for being a great neighbor, and this board for considering Fort Bragg and our requirements as you go forward and do your business. I love the invocation where it talked about making good decisions. That was spot on. I pray the same prayer every day when I go to work. So, Fort Bragg is the 5th largest city in North Carolina, and on behalf of 52,000 plus service members, 12,000 plus deployed right now to over 31 countries, we just want to come say thank you for being great neighbors. And we are trying to be great neighbors as well and work with you all. When you all sent us the letter about this, it got our attention because whenever we talk about buffer zones or things that come close to Fort Bragg, my mind jumps to encroachment. But you folks were actually doing, we're saying, hey, we're trying to be your partner. Are you interested? I'm here to listen because we're interested. And I had some great conversations with your team. And what I wanted to basically do is just come say, there's 5 counties that neighbor Fort Bragg. We appreciate you folks very much for your consideration of our service members and what we have to do. But God bless you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Which order? So we're going with the
Against,
them? How much time do they have?
How many do you have?
3 minutes?
what's the current limit or what's the current count?
9?
Still 3 minutes.
All right, one
wants to get to the podium for 3 minutes?
Yes.
She'll raise her hand when the timer's off. All right. Gary Stanton?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jerry Stanton. My husband and I have lived in the Deer Park subdivision of Scotland County for the past 12 years. We share the concerns of many other Deer Park property owners, whom I represent as the president of the board of directors for the Deer Park Homeowners Association. Deer Park Homeowners Association Board has a duty to look after the interests of the members of our Deer Park community. We represent a total of approximately 530 properties, owners and approximately 260 residents and families. We continue to grow. We all have a vested interest in trying to prevent actions that could have a negative impact on our quality of life, environment, and property values. Combined tax values for our Deer Park properties, including golf course, is total tax value $52,280,820. This information was extracted from the Scotland County GIS website. As you are aware, Deer Park is a major source of revenue that is contributing to the county's survival. Members of Deer Park community want to work with the county commissioners to ensure that any action you take does not decrease property values in Scotland County. This process of pushing the proposed zoning amendment forward is moving too fast and is not in the best interest of our county. I believe all residents of the county should be given the opportunity to hear all the facts about the changes that the zoning commission plans to make and should be given the opportunity to voice our opinions. Please listen to your constituents and slow this down. Do not vote to enact this change in the zoning ordinance until more information is provided to all Scotland County residents and we are given the chance to provide input. Dr. Sarah Simmons, a member of Deer Park Homeowners Association Board, will share with you the ways in which we believe we can work productively together to do what is best for Scotland County citizens. And I would like to relinquish the rest of my 3 minutes to Ms. Dr. Simmons. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Good evening.
I'm Sarah Cole Simmons. My husband Mitch and I grew up in Marburg. We are 25-year residents of the Deer Park community, where I was a rector on the homeowners board. I'm speaking in opposition to the proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance related to tactical and combat training facilities. From the September the 4th letter to the Deer Park HOA, signed by County Manager Kevin Patterson, I became aware that there may be a more recent version of the proposed amendment that incorporates recommendations from the zoning board, but it has not been made public. Therefore, the validity of this hearing can be called into question. One may ask, how can you hold a public hearing on a proposal that has not been made public? However, since you've chosen to continue with this hearing, I will speak on behalf of the Deer Park community to reiterate some of our concerns. Deer Park collected approximately 125 signatures on a petition in opposition to the proposed amendment. You have a copy of that petition. However, this issue is much broader than the Deer Park community. Any proposed zoning ordinance amendment will clearly have far-reaching and long-lasting implications for all Scotland County property owners and could have an adverse effect on our quality of life, environment, and property values. Obviously, many citizens are unaware of this issue, or I suspect there will be more people here tonight. As you consider any proposed amendment, we have repeatedly suggested the following. Number one, retain section 16.4 of the existing ordinance that deals with buffers. Number two, limit both tactical and combat facilities to areas designated as heavy industrial. Number three, require conditional use permit for both types of facilities. And number four, specify valid means by which qualified county personnel can ensure compliance. In addition, we urge you to take a careful and thoughtful approach, ensuring that affected property owners receive individual and timely notification of proposed zoning changes, providing opportunities for citizen input, and enumerating the benefits of such facilities to the county and its citizens, such as taxes and jobs. You were elected to look out for the best interests of county citizens. We urge you to allow the time necessary to ensure that any changes to existing ordinances are the result of an open and transparent process. Thank you for your concern.
Thank you, ma'am.
Greetings. What a great example of democracy in action. People around here to COVID, standing in the rain, waiting to speak, waiting to be heard. No, it's not. You guys have a hard job, and I don't always agree with you, but I respect you, and I know you all are acting in the best interest of the county. I laid out pretty much everything I wanted to say in the letter. I'm here representing Rick Owens and his wife, who are involved with this, and also speaking on behalf. I've been here 30 years, and then grew up here before that. And just a couple of points. It's real simple. I'm in favor of military training. I participate in military training. My Boy Scout troop has. My son came home and told his mom how he got shot. But I can tell you this, when the squad automatic weapon fires rapid fire blanks, it's really loud. My information is 180 decibels. Concussion grenades, stimulating grenades, they're loud. We're in favor of military training. We just want it to be done in a way that takes into consideration the neighbors and gives them a chance to have some input. Simple solution, retain the conditional use permit. If you retain the conditional use permit requirement, the neighbors will be able to have input, everybody will be on the same page, they'll know, and then you make an informed decision. And I think you ought to have a conditional use permit even in the heavy industrial, because what if vibrations or a sudden bang startles a man working on a lathe at a machine shop causes their process? So I think they ought to have some input as well. It's an unusual use and it shouldn't be allowed as a right anywhere. The county, you got smart people here, you can figure out the right ways to govern it, right conditions to put. You know, if it's live grounds, you can put a requirement of a remediation plan to get up to it. Also just want to mention a couple things. I know your staff worked hard trying to identify places where this could happen, but I've been practicing law 30 years and I've never seen a comprehensive zoning map of Scotland County. So there's no way to really kind of double check behind them right now. And, you know, they may be absolutely right by this saying as attorneys, we can't do that. We don't have that ability. Your current process works. Griffon Group just had a hearing, they got a conditional use permit. There's no problem. Every other county pretty much that we were able to identify, I'm sorry if we missed county by one, but we didn't have a whole lot of time to do all these reviews out there. But you know, if everybody else requires some kind of permitting process and public's input, it's a big deal. We want to support the troops, we want to support the military and the police, but let's do it in a way that respects the neighbors and gives the neighbors some input. I don't know if I have any time with it. Few seconds. Thank y'all again. We really appreciate what you do for the county. I know that you're acting with us.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. My name is Rick Owens. Recently moved out to Slate Circle,
Greg
mainly
Owen.
because of the peacefulness of this county. Wife and I have been coming down this area for, she's been for 25 years, for long owned the house in Southern Times. Searched for a long time to find this piece of property, finally did. And now I find out that they want to put in a training facility next door. I'm all for a training facility. I think our boys should have the best facility possible. However, when it comes to noise pollution and a 5.56 shell, these are both empty cartridges, but one fires a blank, one fires a live round. They contain the same amount of power. It's this noise that's the issue. I understand they'll be blowing charges long enough or large enough to take the door off the hinges. The sole purpose of the training and the research I've been able to do is to walk into a facility, shake hands, make friends, win their favor, but it doesn't always go that way. Sometimes they have to take adverse action, reach a door, clear a village. That's why they're going to have four different little separate villages, a big building piece. This is per GBCI's own admission in their zoning permit request back in whenever it was. It's hard to remove a door from the hinges. I mean, granted, it's a simulated explosion. How are you going to remove the doors of the hinges unless it actually goes? There's no projectile. There's not really any danger. But as far as you've heard a lot of words about blanks, a blank makes the same noise as the others. So do the charges. That I'm well aware of. As far as decibel level, I would challenge each one of you. I should have had a copy for you. A long rifle puts out decibels of 140 to 150 decibels. Granted, it's supposed to be 80 at the property line, and there's a distance. I am 1,200 feet from this place. Let's move on to economics. From their own admission, they'll have play actors speaking in their native language, etc. So as far as jobs, the guy at the maintenance house, the one mowing the yard, the one putting the doors back on the hinges, yeah, but that could be anybody. Someone answering the phone could be anybody. But unless you have a specific skill set, fluent in foreign languages and all dialects thereof, have knowledge of clerics and so forth, to be a play actor, I don't know how many people in Scotland County would qualify for that kind of a job. As far as property taxes, yeah, the property taxes will go up, and that Scotland County's going to in our pocket. I can see that. But I don't know how much it's going to go up when you're building buildings out of plywood and blowing them up and putting them back together. 8-story, 10-story hotel, I can see something. And the last thing, to remove conditional use permit, to remove the buffering, even in the combat zones as was proposed. There was language in Scotland County's books already to call for a conditional use permit, call for a little more specific for combat training. The BPCI applied for this. They were denied in the letter March 6th that Ed Johnson wrote that wasn't going to fly. So they go back to the drawing board. Now they're calling it tactical training. I challenge each one of you to go to Google and type in definition tactical training. The only thing that I have found to pop up is something the Great Soviet Experiment was written in 1979. There really is not a whole lot of difference between tactical training and combat training. They can say there is. The decibels are going to be the same. The tactics that the boys use, whether it be tactical training or combat training, are very, 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 very similar. Okay, it's a blank round. It's a simulated explosion that actually does take a door off the hinges. It's noise pollution. And lastly, there's 5 different zonings that removes conditional use permit for this particular text amendment that they proposed. To do that to the citizens of this county, granted there's a 30-acre minimum requirement. That doesn't address, they're buying up 10 acres here, 20 acres next door, and combine it 30. Supposedly there was, the planning board said there was 9 pieces of property that affects the entire county. And to take away the people's right to do what I'm doing now and stand up and speak my piece, I don't see where that's right. You're kind of infringing on the citizens of this county, their First Amendment, of saying, hey, wait a minute, do we really want to do this? They trust in you guys and voted you into office to do the right thing. I believe that you will. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Hi. I'm Lori Hancock. I'm one of the very close property owners over there. And I'd
What's
just
your
like to
name?
start out and remind everybody that your council, we've elected you to protect us and to protect the residents of Scotland County.
Ma'am, could you repeat your name one more time?
Lorraine Hancock. You are here to look out for our best
Did you get
interests as the citizens of Scotland County. I've moved here from a rural area that our council did not look out for our best interests. And I constantly had to fight big business to protect my land. 30 years I did that. I was done. Started looking 15 years ago for a place to retire. So what I did is finally came here, fell in love with Scotland County, where I wanted to be. So started making here after 15 years. Searched, discovered the farm that I'm in now, and looking for very rural, very private, and a great quality of life. So when I found this place, I thought, this is it. This is my retirement place. I never have to move. So I can raise my thoroughbred horses. I raise honeybees. I can do all of that and not worry about anybody coming and encroaching on my land or my quality of life. Only to find 2 months after buying this place that my dreams of the dream house that I have and for my quality of life was about to be stripped away from me. And for the property loss that we're going to have, we paid top dollar for this, we paid market value, and now it's in jeopardy of losing all of that. So the property value will definitely decrease with my farm. And it's going to be a poor decision to people that we put in here to protect us. If this was going to be in your backyard, this would not be an issue. It would not even be on the table if there would be constant bombing and smoke and guns in your backyard. It wouldn't happen. But it's not in your backyard, it's mine. So the other decision we have is the bees. If they're in constant smoke, they will not be able to fly and pollinate, so most of the bees are going to die. My horses are thoroughbreds. I spend years researching who to breed what to. It's expensive. They're flight animals. As soon as they start hearing this, there's a good possibility that my 19 horses are going to wind up on 15,501. My foals will be under constant stress and possibly dying from just the trauma of the bombing that's going to go on night and day. Since they are flight banned from all the, but again, I just want to remind you, if this was going to be in your backyard, you would be thinking a lot stronger about it. Remember to protect the citizens and do the right thing for your residents that we have trusted you, we've elected you, and to protect us from losing our quality of life or property values. And you and yourself would not want to hear constant bombing, shooting, and smelling smoke, which also means I can't go outside. I'm a severe asthmatic, so I cannot. I have letters from doctors that I cannot be in severe smoke. I would have to leave the residence for the 180 days or whatever that they're talking about. So thank you for listening to me. I'm trusting you that you'll make the right decisions for your residents, and keep in mind that you are here representing us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
They don't realize how close William is to Fort Bragg.
Greetings, Chair Davis and members of the Scott County Board of Commissioners. My name is Philip Harris. I'm an attorney out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm going to try to be brief. I never trust a lawyer that says he's going to be brief, but I'm going to do my best this time. So I'm here, I represent a group called Veterans and Sportsmen for the Sand Hills. It's an organization that believes in conservation of game, wildlife, as well as facilitating wildlife activities. And I am here, and I submitted the comments in the presentation package that you got, because my clients are concerned about opening up additional areas. My organization was partially founded because, as you note in your package, DGCI, who is doing a similar facility as this, is actually adjacent to game lands, and my clients understand that there could be some potential detrimental impacts to that game land. I wanted to just touch on a few things. Most of the important stuff is in the information that I provided to you, but I did want to touch on a few things. One, why is a conditional use permit here appropriate for either type of facility? Well, number one, when you're reviewing a conditional use permit, as I'm sure you understand, there are 3 additional conditions or factors that you have to review. And one is that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. 2, that the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. And 3, that the establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. So these are all factors that are used when you're looking at unusual type of activities like a tactical and combat training facility, which is why in 4 of the 5 counties that Mr. Essig and Mr. Purcell mentioned, they require these for these type of facilities. This is unlike any of the other uses in the neighborhood commercial, highway commercial, or the light industrial. The regular uses or the conditional uses. The conditional uses, for instance, in the neighborhood commercial district, you have to get a conditional use permit for bait stores, marinas, service stations, and fruit stands. And a tactical training facility certainly is a little bit more unusual in the neighborhood commercial district than either of those things are. And that's why we would just respectfully request that you require a CUP for either of these facilities. These are unique. They're going to be unique in each one of the zoning districts that are allowed there. And frankly, if you did want to start, as Mr. Essig mentioned, he focuses on how onerous the conditional use permit process would be. This is not the place to not use the conditional use permit process. Maybe with the bait stores, marinas, and fruit stands, maybe there's not a conditional use permit required for those. But tactical and combat training facilities, certainly a conditional use permit should be required. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Evening, gentlemen, ladies. My name is Derek Williams. I'm a veteran, and I currently work on Fort Bragg as a contractor, supporting training on the installation. What I'd like to address tonight is specifically in respect to the provision that specifies the 60 days for the tactical training facilities. The memorandum or letter that was put out today that specifically said that the contract company only forecasts 30 days of current utilization for simulated rounds. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of simulated round, but it sounds an a lot like a real round. And one of the points that the memorandum made was that those rounds should only be expended within 30 days, or a maximum of 30 days within the training facility, and that it should be no more of a nuisance than hunters that are operating in the area. I can tell you that whenever you're doing simulated training, that one round does not sound very much like a simulated combat training training exercise. There's multiple rounds going off. It's there to design to simulate war, right? So trying to sit there and attest that you're not going to feel like you're in a war zone and try and downplay that is I think disingenuous on the part of the contract company. I think that the facility will be used to the maximum extent that the county commission is going to allow and grant them and bestow them the facility. It may be only 30 days in the first year, but it'll go to 60 days. And as I heard earlier, the lawyer present, they can ask for an exception to that to grant for the county to grant them an even longer period. Eventually, that'll grow to encompass that as well. I object to the nature that the tactical training facility should be allowed in anything other than an L2 training, or excuse me, an industrial complex. I think it should be accompanied along with the combat training facilities as outlined. And that is my say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is
Good
A.
evening.
This is A.
My name is Courtney Williams, and that was my husband, Derek Williams, that just spoke. Between the two of us, my husband runs the intel training for Fort Bragg for the simulated training that you will hear the artillery explosives going off. And we both have about 15 years military experience between the two of us. My last 6 years have been spent supporting Delta Air Force at the compound. So we have a great understanding of the differences between simulated and non-simulated training. Our biggest issue is, for those who don't know, in the county, there's a lot of residents in Scotland County that are not familiar with military jargon, military tactics, and training. I do not feel that the county's residents have been educated enough on what this will do to the county and transform the county. We were Moore County residents for 10 years. There is a reason that Moore County has not allowed this. They have allowed training facilities for intel training, but they will not permit this to come to their county because they do not want to transform their county into an industrial zone where live fire will be allowed, simulated rounds will be allowed, and it will push residents away from wanting to settle in their county. And I believe that if we go forward with this as we are currently, without making more amendments that other Deercroft homeowners have already spoken to, so I'm not going to repeat them, that we will be allowing the military training to take over. We will become an industrial area. We will, if everybody's gone out and looked at the facility in Maxton, that is what we're going to transform Scotland County into, and we will not be the beautiful county that people come to live in that we are now. So I hope the board takes those points into consideration when moving forward. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chairman Davis, Commissioners, and Manager Patterson. My name is Andrew Nemeth. I was raised a majority of my life in Lawrenceburg. This community needs so much.
What's your name?
As I was talking here, I was
Sir,
environment.
what's your name, please?
I apologize. My name is Andrew Nemeth.
Nemeth?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You want me to restart? Part of what made Lawrenceburg appealing to my family and myself is the quiet life. This is much bigger than just one project facility. Our community's future is gravely at stake. In trying to accommodate this one project, our leaders are proponents of our rights of all Scotland County citizens by allowing combat training facilities to be built next to vital community access, such as schools, churches, daycare facilities, and hospitals, among other things. With this big around here, I have to conduct Shabbat at home, and this will further complicate things for myself and my family. Community input is essential during the zoning process to protect the health and safety of our citizens as the community grows, and the shelter house the public is undemocratic. The proposed zoning definition change means that Scotland County residents neighboring this new type of zoning are forfeiting their rights to a conditional use permit during the process. Military training facilities should not border our neighborhood or Scotland County state game land because of the disturbance to wildlife, hunters, and the public on those lands. Any facility in Scotland County being used for tactical or combat training should require a conditional use permit where neighbors have an opportunity to present evidence about how explosions and automatic open fire could affect their life, livelihood, and property values. It appears that the county and its lawyers are rewriting the Scotland County rezoning laws and rushing to pass them in the middle of the pandemic when people are distracted. I, among other communities, find that despicable. The proposed amendment is a short-sighted solution that will have long-lasting negative implications to our community. Tonight, I'm calling on our county commissioners to carefully consider the far-reaching implications this zoning change would have on Scotland County residents. We are trying to avoid another decision which brought
Number 9.
by placing the name of chicken farms with sand waste in the air and swamp supply, all this is known environmental control. And most of you live within the city where these issues don't necessarily concern you. We implore you to make the right decision for the community, especially for all the seniors. The future of our community is at stake. Please vote on the proposed amendment. We don't want our neighborhoods to turn into war zones. Thank you. On behalf of Darrell McNair, since he could not be here tonight, he sent this statement. Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Darrell McNair. I'm a Scotland County native, and my family has a long history in this community that we love. As you may know, my father was the first and founding president of the NAACP in Scotland County. My family and I also established the McNair Foundation Incorporated, a scholarship program designed to to support local North Carolina students as they further their academic pursuits at historically black colleges and universities. We want to be here tonight to speak up, to give voice to many of those communities whose voices otherwise would go unheard. Zoning text change amendment being considered tonight will pave the way for the for-profit Washington DC defense contractors to turn our neighborhoods into war zones glad and safe from neighboring families. The proposed DGCI tactical training facility is of particular concern as it would have a disparate impact on African Americans, particularly families living in nearby neighborhoods. To fix this simple, any facility in Scotland County being used for tactical or combat training should require a conditional use permit where neighbors have an opportunity to present evidence about how explosions are inactivated prior to affect their life, as I reiterated. Livelihood and property values. Scotland County's mission is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens and promote prosperity and well-being for the people of Scotland County. The proposed zoning law change and the swift manner in which they are being considered is in direct conflict with the county's mission. Community input is essential during the zoning process to protect the health and safety of our citizens as the community grows. This time, you're about to represent military training facility, turn your neighborhood into a war zone with the proposed text change being considered tonight. Your backyard may be next. He stands with the Scotland County Ministerial Office, and he calls on commissioners to stand up for Scotland County.
Thank you, sir. All right, that's the 9 that was,
That's everybody for the against. Y'all want to go?
okay.
Bring the other one?
Yeah, bring the others in.
Can we take a couple of minutes break?
Hey, give us about 5 minutes, okay?
You need to recess? Or
Yeah, we'll recess 5 minutes.
Take a break.
Just take a break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
I didn't know whether you wanted to go and thank those who've already spoken.
I will.
It's not like that, it's not like.
Jason, I miss your candy, but now I'll buy it and bring it. You need something for this long meeting. You give me some candy.
I should have brought the candy. Should have brought the
Should have brought the candy, Jason.
I know, should have brought the chocolate.
Oh, God, don't mention chocolate. Oh, God.
That's what I've got. I've got chocolate.
Oh, God. I'd die for a piece of chocolate.
Justin, like the booth, Justin.
I stand up, I can't sit down.
I'm kind of like that.
I have a blood clot once in my life, so I don't, I'm trying to sit down over an hour.
I am the deputy to the garrison commander, so I am basically the city manager of Fort Bragg.
You gonna give them 15 minutes speech thing before?
Hmm?
No, you didn't have it. No.
7:50.
I asked if I could come, and I just wanted to, because I spent.
That one guy said he wasn't gonna be around long at all.
Like Banner.
Yeah, that'd be,
Make sure that we understood what we.
well, the real trick with it is it's still, 3 minutes apiece.
They got 3 minutes.
3 minutes apiece. Unless,
3 minutes.
unless a board member has a question.
So I just wanted to say thank you, because you got, like.
Chad, you see what I'm telling you? About the conditional use.
We'll see.
The county changed.
But you know, one of the things that the gentleman said, a lot of people here don't speak Arabic.
I
could hear what you know what?
I'm telling you about that conditional use. That's what everybody's got on their mind.
That's just what it is. I want to have a condition, I need a conditional use to do whatever I need to do. And we're having that permit. My good neighbor here wants to come speak for that condition.
Thanks for giving me an opportunity to just say thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
But he can't. Because he's not a subject matter expert on what I'm doing.
I guess I could ask you, have you all been to leadership
No, I
for
mean,
Bragg or come to the opportunity to see what we do, how we do it?
Speak, whether it be appraisers
Jump out of the jump.
But just because they're my neighbor.
But there's a leadership for Bragg, if you guys wanted to come for a day, where we actually brief you on what we do and then show you, give you an example of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. And, this gentleman here, when he was talking about watching a door, when he's watching a door get blown on, was that at Fort Bragg?
Yeah.
That over at range 37 with the special forces where they do a shape charge to blow a door?
They didn't blow a door, it just was.
I didn't think about it.
These 5 different components going on at the same time, and it's going.
As they breach out, so flash bangs is what it is, a flash bang grenade, a breach. Yeah, so If you all wanted to do that one day just for fun, just to come see it, we'll put you with an airborne person. They'll explain to you what they do every day. I'd love to have you guys come out. You can set that up. Yeah, I enjoyed it because I grew up in Montana and I got to shoot an M25 sniper rifle at 400 meters. And that scope was the price of my car. It was nice. I know, I'm a civilian, I'm a continuity, I'm like a state out But my job is to try to how long yeah, I'm slated to go very soon. That's about it. I was in every year. You want to talk about noise? Day and night. So that was exactly how we were going to. And then prior to that, I was.
I'm tired of calling everything. What we gonna
Yeah.
Never had to deal with the sort of, right?
Yeah, we'll find this one. First thing the church open the door. Now I'll find ways that.
Why would you bring in the
I was around. Raptor is a great place to be stationed.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly where it
You're
is.
talking about
Very small, nice. Have you gone to visit?
Yeah.
They have great food. And, stop this area.
I just don't see any difference. I really, I
But outside. So you had, so you probably got a. Covered great. I love it, yeah, particularly during the holiday, during Christmas, where they, have the Chris Kindle march, and my wife would drink the hot spice wine, and I would eat my foods, I would the Roberts, yeah, I was a graphic director.
It's making our life hard, that's all. That's all we're doing, because it doesn't seem they gonna come in with their attitude. That's why, I know, if somebody's hurt with their attitude, it's not gonna be any different.
Thank you for your service.
You ready, Jason? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. I still want to talk over anybody. May I proceed?
Yes, sir. Go state your name and where you're from.
Yes, sir. And can y'all hear me okay? I'm still figuring out the mask thing. My name is T.C. Morpus. I'm an attorney with Grow Law Firm out of Chapel Hill, and I'm here on behalf of DGCI Corporation in support of the proposed text amendment. With me tonight, we'll be hearing speaking our two representatives from DGCI, Mr. Bobby Cinco, Mr. Rusty Nance, and Mr. Wade Owens. I'm going to talk to you all about the text amendment, why we think it's good for DGCI, why we think it's good for Scotland County. Mr. Cinco, Mr. Nance, and Mr. Owens are going to talk about the specific project that's kind of giving rise to all of this. While the focus, of course, is on the text amendment, you all have heard a lot of information from folks about that specific project. And with all due respect, you've heard a lot of misinformation. And we would like to try and set the record straight tonight. And so that's what my colleagues will be doing. Before I speak about the text amendment, I think it's also important that we put this in context. People are talking about training, they're talking about quality of life, this and that. What I did not hear folks opposed to the project talking about were defense contractors. And I respectfully say to you, that is what's really going on here. There's a fight between two defense contractors to obtain a training contract with U.S. Army Special Forces and U.S. military general. I do not have specific evidence that I can give you tonight, so I will not name names, but I would submit to you that if my clients are able to build their project as proposed, another defense contractor with a similar facility also in North Carolina will not be able to operate that facility anymore. It is that simple. I do not want to belabor this, but I think these details are important because they provide important context. 2018, DGCI decided they wanted to become a part of Scotland County. They started the process of preparing their site for this project. Mr. Owens, who you're going to hear from, spoke with the Scotland County zoning staff. He said, what do I need to do? And on their advice, he submitted a rezoning request for neighborhood commercial. That was the advice he received. And there was no hide the ball kind of shell game going on here. The application was crystal clear. They were going to be doing military training. This talk about live fire and all that has never been the case, and it will not be the case. It was very clear, though, from day one, military training. The property was rezoned, and we, until January of this year, believe that that's all we need. I say January, actually, we're after March. Nothing happened for nearly 14 months. On January 28, 2020, DGCI got a pre-award bid notification. That means they were told by the government they were going to get this contract. Didn't mean they had it yet, but they were going to get it. 3 days later, and these are all public records, we can provide them to you if you want, an attorney named Lacey Reeves, who's a very well-respected attorney from the Smith Anderson law firm in Raleigh, very large law firm. Okay. Sends a letter 3 days later on behalf of an anonymous client, we still don't know who that client is, asking for interpretation of the zoning ordinance dealing with training facilities. After that, the county attorney issues a letter basically saying DGCI cannot proceed. My firm gets involved. We file an appeal to the Board of Adjustment. We have communications. And it's decided that, in fact, we can proceed. The building permit is issued in May of this year. Within 30 days, Mr. Owens and Ms. Hancock filed an appeal to the Board of Adjustment and a lawsuit against DGCI and also Scotland County. I don't think any of that is a coincidence. We have just recently received discovery requests in the lawsuit referencing a company called Aquila Alliance LLC, which respectfully has, in my opinion, I of course am a little biased, nothing to do with their lawsuit. It does, however, have to do with that contract. It is also worth noting that the firm that Mr. Reeves works for is the same firm representing Mr. Owens and Ms. Hancock. A second firm, you heard from Mr. Philip Harris this evening. He said he's from a firm in Raleigh. He's actually from Kilpatrick Townsend, a very well-respected firm in Raleigh. They also have lobbyists, some of whom represent defense contractors. So that may also be a coincidence. But I think what is going on here is every time DGCI moves forward, their opposition pushes them back. The last thing I want to say before I get to the text amendment is I want to address something specific with Mr. Purcell, but his letter to you dated September 3rd. He talks about Aquila Alliance, and he says the U.S. Small Business Administration disqualified DGCI and its partners at Aquila Alliance. Then he goes on to say DGCI continues to pursue plans to build a facility, but has not informed its neighbors who it plans to train on the property or how they would operate. So it sounds mysterious and terrible. Well, our mission has not changed from day one. It is true they were disqualified. There were numerous protests after we were the successful bidders and notified in January. And at some point, the U.S. Small Business Administration determined there was a single line in the joint venture agreement that was not correct. And because of that, Aquila Alliance, who would be working with DGCI, was disqualified. But we believe this contract will be renewed, probably next year, if not in the next few years. We want to be in a position to take advantage of that, to bring those jobs and that tax base to Scotland County. So DGCI is in it for the long haul. So when you ask who are these mysterious folks, that hasn't changed. Now, I want to talk to you about the text amendment specifically. We think this is a good compromise. And I think before I get too far into it, we believe that DGCI has the right now to build that property. We have a building permit that is valid. We have voluntarily agreed not to build until October 1 because of the Board of Adjustment appeal. Barring that, we can start immediately. However, we are happy to work with the county because we believe this text amendment provides clarity, not just for us, but also for future people who want to work in Scotland County. For us, right now, our right to build is being challenged by the Board of Adjustment. If this text amendment passes, the DGCI can submit an application and obtain a permit under the text amendment. It's just that simple for us. We believe this is reasonable because it recognizes there's a range of uses. You've heard tremendous information about live fire, this and that. Well, you know, if that's the proposal, then that needs to be what's been called a combat training facility, which, as you all know by now, would require a conditional use permit and heavy industrial district. If you have something like our facility with no live fire training, that's not even used for half a year, with limited use of simulated weapons, which I think my folks are going to talk about how those really compare to live fire, much less to the extraordinary artillery you need to hear something miles away in a neighboring community, then the much lighter use, the tactical training facility is appropriate. We believe this strikes a good balance because heavy uses, intensive uses are going to need a conditional use permit, and less than significant uses can proceed of right. They're more business friendly, letting people on private property, not involved in public land, private property, use their property in a way that benefits Scotland County. The last thing I'd say is that you all already know this, there are protections even under the tactical training facility. You must have 30 acres. You have to still maintain buffer. You have limits on the days you can operate, the days you can even have simulated fire. So we think all of this is appropriate. I think it strikes a good balance. We hope that the county will approve the text amendment so we can move forward. I'm happy to answer any questions, otherwise I'll ask Mr. Seco to come in. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is he not under the same 3 minutes?
No, he's good. 3 minutes.
That was more than 3.
There are only 4 of us. There are only 4 of us, sir. So I think we're speaking a little bit longer. But we're still going to limit it to 30 minutes.
You're still limited to 3 minutes, sir. Please.
Oh, we are?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. We did not know that.
Yes, sir.
So I'll let my folks know that. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ma'am.
I thought we had said we would give them equal time.
3 minutes. What was this thing?
See, I thought we were giving each side 30.
30 minutes, what I thought.
Well, that's fine. I mean, that's good.
Good afternoon, can everybody hear me?
If you don't mind, give us just a minute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can wait right here.
You wait, sir. Sir,
You can wait.
You can wait in here.
come on back.
Arthur.
Yes, sir. Just give us, stay right here with us.
There's 4.
There's 4.
Okay, so you're gonna divide that into 30. You give them 7 minutes
Did
apiece. Give 'em-
did it not say that the total time for each side would be no more than 30 minutes, but each presenter had?
That's what it said, or.
Yes.
That's what it said.
Okay.
I missed the 3-minute part. I just thought that was.
It's in the later portion of it.
He didn't speak 3 minutes. He's probably more like 5 minutes.
But I think the rest of these guys need to know how much time they do that.
You don't know 3 minutes, sir?
No.
3 minutes, but we'll be less if we have to. We have no problem with that, sir. We don't want to take your good people.
No, you're fine. If you want to speak 5 minutes, that's good.
3, sir, or less.
Whatever. Make yourself happy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir, ma'am.
I was confused.
Ma'am, my name is Bobby Cinco. I am the Director of Training for DGCI. I obviously you could hear my voice, and I'm obviously from the north.
And what was
But
your
I'm
last
just what
name,
you would
sir?
call a misplaced Yankee, because I've been here since 1980 and I never went home.
Your last name again?
Cinco, sir, just like kitchen sink with an O, Sinko. Good.
All right, sir, thank you.
Sir, first I'd like to thank the commissioners for allowing me to talk to you this afternoon and into tonight. I consider it an honor to be with you today. And the reason I feel that, I think Scotland County is one of the most patriotic counties, not only in North Carolina, but probably the world. Why would I say that? Why? Why would some guy who came here in 1980 from the north say that? I'm a retired U.S. Army Sergeant Major, Special Forces, Green Beret, that did 30 years in the Army from 1980 to 2010. Did multiple combat tours. And where did I get that training? I got that training right here in northern Scotland County. Ryan Luzon Drop Zone, Southern Camp McCall, and the areas around the game lands and everything, right here in this county. Somebody had to train me. And it was the great people supporting from this great county and those soldiers that trained me, and thousands of other men and women, black, white, of any color, any gender, to go fight our country's wars and win. Because we have a lot to lose. And I think Scotland County knows that more than anybody. You guys have places here, Ryan Luzon and other places, there you see helicopters, you see planes, you see soldiers. But if you really look at it, how much do they really, how much noise and how much movement do they really do? That really bothers people from Scotland County. And if you look at that, the majority of the people that I've talked to that trained me and have done supporting roles out in Robin Sage and some of the other supporting exercises that are ran in the Special Forces qualification course, they will tell you they love to do it. They've been supporting the U.S. Army and Special Forces for over 60 years now, and are proud of it, and we're proud of it. I'm proud of it. There's a lot of misconceptions that are being put out there, and some of the people that are going to talk after me, some of my former officers and commanders, that will try to separate the fact from the fiction and let you know exactly what's going to go on. Again, I am pleased to come before you today to let you know that this county, in its patriotic duty, has happened since World War II. With the airport, with the training of the World War II pilots, with the glider troops, with the paratroops, all the way through Vietnam into today. And that sound of freedom still rings in this county. So from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank you for letting me train here when I was a younger man up until the man I am today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir, man.
Okay, thank you. Hey, how are y'all?
Good.
Good. I am Lieutenant Colonel retired Rusty Nance, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and address you ladies and gentlemen today. I retired with a little over 20 years in the military. I'm North Carolina by birth, and I've spent, I just figured it out today, over 25 years in this general area. So I've lived here more than I've lived anywhere else in my life. I'm a second generation Green Beret, so I trained here in Scotland County at Camp McCall, as did my father, Vietnam era. My son is currently deployed in the sandbox, and when he returns this coming spring, he plans on coming through Special Forces Selection Assessment, so he'll be the third generation to do this. Interestingly enough, when I retired the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, I was the director of language and culture, which is an interesting career path. what I begged for and what I needed desperately, I had over 1,900 students in the final year. That was at the height of the war. What I desperately needed was language and culture immersion facilities. We had none on Fort Bragg. We had plenty of fire maneuver areas. We didn't have any cultural villages. At that time, we were writing the RSOF service and support contract. This was around 2010. And I begged to have them written into the contract. It was. That contract was won, and we did our training off post then. Fast forward, the contract is now being let again, and we still need them. In the big Army, and don't confuse Special Forces with the Rangers or Navy SEALs or even the Marine Corps, you are taught to shoot, move, and communicate. And I get it. That's what keeps soldiers alive. In Special Forces, we do it a little bit different. We communicate first, and then we move, and then we shoot. Unfortunately, we do a great deal of shooting in Special Forces. What we've done over the past 20 years, we have assisted a partner nation in addressing their own internal security issues and securing their own borders. And that's the way we're going to win the global war on terrorism. It will not be won with blunt force trauma. If that's how it would be won, we would have ended this war in a period of 3 or 4 years. We send these soldiers to do a very tough job. And the way in order to do that is we have to teach them how to live in a foreign culture. We live with our partner nation forces, unlike every other force that's out there. So they immerse in a foreign culture, they live with them. They speak the foreign language to a degree. Admittedly, it's difficult to learn a foreign language in 6 months. But what we do in these cultural villages is we bring these soldiers in, we put role players in the village, and we hit them with the limits. And they learn how to deal with these cultural issues, and that's what we teach them in these villages. Now, last year, and I don't recall the exact number, I think we lost around 6 Green Berets in Afghanistan. And the question you have to ask yourself is, had they not had this cultural immersion training, they didn't speak foreign language, how many would we have lost in Afghanistan? What we were trying to do is save lives, and that's the purpose of these villages. Military installations are really great places to do live fire training. They're really great places to do shooting. They're really great places to do moving. But right now, still today, they're not great places for communicating. And that's what we're trying to do. There are a great deal of misconceptions floating out there, and I'm sure everyone before me has pointed this out. We're not live firing where we're at. It is not suitable. We would have to build huge berms, and frankly, we never wanted to do that out there. A blank fire is not a live fire by any stretch of the imagination. I don't care if there's the same amount of powder in the round. If there's a blank adapter on it, it is not loud whatsoever. A grenade simulator is not a breaching charge. We cannot, will not blow doors off any facility we have out there. That was never our intention. It is not a loud area. I do have to point out that in the Sandhills game plan, the military is authorized to train. However, they can only use blank fire, and they can only use grenade simulators. The Sandhills game plan butts up to the Deercroft community, right to them. So the things we're doing at our training facility can be done right next door to the Deercroft community. So we're not asking for anything unusual. The military can train in the Sandhills game area, so the gentleman who was addressing that it's unusual activity in the Sandhills game land, well, actually, no, it's not. We're not doing anything on our land that the military can't already do in the Sandhills game land, so I'm a little bit confused. I feel sorry for the lady. She loves her horses. I love my horses. I plan on having my horses at the training facility as well. It is co-located right next to Rhineland's own drop zone, where they already use. They can drive tanks on Camp McCall, to my knowledge, and do a lot more. I'm sorry, I don't need to, I think I've exceeded my 3 minutes. I'm a little bit nervous. What are your questions for me, please?
I actually do have one.
Yes.
You, in one of the comments that someone has made, it may have been one of the letters, so I don't know where it came from. There was a comment about how many folks that BCGI might employ from the local community.
Yeah, I can't answer that. Honestly, I cannot. Wade will be better.
Okay.
I think he's after me next. Please ask him that question. He's prepared to address it. I don't know that he can, but I know he's met with someone to set up a hiring board here in the community. Please.
Well, I'll ask you that.
Yes, sir. Ma'am?
I have a question. I heard you on the radio this morning,
Yes, ma'am.
and I wanted to thank you for highlighting the long history of military support that Scotland County has provided for the last 75 years.
I didn't have the numbers straight.
Anyway,
It's amazing.
as a reminder, I think many of us know it, but we don't hear it.
I actually did some research on that, and it's absolutely phenomenal what Scotland County did. And I think it's overlooked. I really do, especially the D-Day thing that I brought up this morning. You know, for Eisenhower came here, and he had a day job. I mean, he was in charge of everything that was going on in the European theater. And it's a big deal. He flew all the way back because he was getting ready for D-Day. And D-Day was a big deal. I mean, that was the apex. They knew if they could establish a foothold that it was over with. Eventually they'd win. It would be touch and go, but no, that was a big deal. And Scotland County played a huge deal. Had they not come here and rehearsed, it would have been a train wreck. And it was a disaster. I appreciate it. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Yes, sir. What are the questions? I mean, please.
I believe we're good.
Okay, hey, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Ms. Blake.
They called me last night.
Moving slow.
I suggested go to the radio. I suggested you
You're good.
for the radio.
Well, hey, y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, hey, good evening. My name is Wade Owens. I'm an employee of DGCI. Appreciate you taking time. I know it's been a long evening. Taking time to
Wade
listen to
Owens.
our perspective on the text amendment and on our specific project. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on our project as we go along. Besides being a member of DGCI, I served in the military for 26 years as an infantry special forces officer. Did conducted training at Camp McCall. Did multiple tours at Fort Bragg, one of which I was the director of training at the JFK Special Warfare Center and School, where we were responsible for development and managing the training programs and instruction for all the Army Special Operations training. And when I retired, the first job I did outside the military was working for a company that actually ran the RSOF training support contract that you've heard about tonight. So I know intimately, the requirements of the contract, and what it takes to execute that contract, the uses of the training facility, and the things that are going to go on in the training facility. As most of you probably know, I'll just give you a quick update or summary. Our property is located in northern Scotland County. We're about a mile south of Camp McCall. We have a road frontage on Highway 15501, and about roughly probably 2/3 of our property on the east, south, part of the west, and a good chunk of the north is bounded by Sandhill Game. There are two pieces of private property that bound our land. One of them is a tree farm, and the other is owned by a citizen that lives in it. As I stated earlier, or as it was stated earlier by one of my colleagues, we purchased this land specifically for the purpose of conducting military training. And one of the things that Rusty talked to you all about was the training that we're doing is primarily focused on interpersonal communications, cross-cultural communications, negotiations, conflict resolution, that sort of thing. And the facility that we're going to be building will include 4 village complexes with 8 buildings each that will include a religious structure, whether it's a church, a temple, a mosque, a market, residences, schools, and that sort of thing. So it will facilitate a wide variety of those interactions. And these facilities will be equipped with props and role players. Sometimes they'll be native speaking, sometimes not, that will facilitate these interactions and the training of our soldiers. So a lot of the information that I think you've heard tonight and you've heard over maybe the last several days really focuses on
some of the combat-related training. There will be a little bit that takes place in our facility, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But just as a little background, and some of you may remember, DGCI worked with Scotland County back in 2018 to get rid of this property that we wanted to buy and rezone. It was originally zoned open space. I located the property, went to the zoning office, talked to the staff there, worked with them, submitted an application, and on the application we stated specifically the purpose for our use for the facility. In September of 18, I met with the Planning and Zoning Board, again in person, talked to them about what we're going to do with the facility. And then in November, met with this body, the county commissioners, and again explained and answered questions on the use of our property. The property description that I talked about at that point has not changed. Okay? And just to refresh and make sure everybody understands very clearly what we're going to be doing, I'm just going to read to you kind of what that is. So our intended activities on our property are to support military training for our Army Special Operations soldiers based in Fort Bragg, Canada. To meet the U.S. government requirements, our facility will be required to consist of 4 villages, 8 buildings each that will be connected by a trail network. And these villages will be built to replicate different regions around the world where our soldiers will most likely be operating. They will primarily be used as a training facility for a variety of non-combative situational training exercises that have been described previously. Most of the training will be done at daylight hours and not involve the use of firearms. And there will be absolutely no use of live firearms on the property or live explosives. There will be times potentially if the government wants to use it, they could use it for tactical training, which would be used for small unit tactics, where there may be teams of up to 12 soldiers that would be participating in reconnaissance, potentially raids or some sort of an ambush, which are short duration missions, and there will be blank ammunition fired at that time, but it wouldn't last very long, and it doesn't happen very often. There are, as we said, our estimated facility usage is probably about 120 days a year, and we think that the use of blank ammunition would be 30 days a year or less. And I'm saying that based on experience with running this contract and then historical use. So on the 5th of November, the Scotland County Commissioners approved our rezoning application, and we started working on the project. And we actually bought the land because the purchase of the land was contingent upon the rezoning process. So we've been working on that ever since. And I just would kind of like to point out that, I think that the training plans that we have on our site are really consistent with a lot of activity that already happens in the area. As I mentioned, we are bounded by large tracts of Sand Hills Game Lands and very close to Camp McCall. If you don't know it, Sand Hills Game Lands, the military has authorization and permission to conduct training on Sand Hills Game Lands, and they do frequently. I did when I was there. Training can range from land navigation to small unit tactics, which involves blank fire. So that happens in the area. Also, the Robin Sage exercise that you're all familiar with happens throughout 13 counties in central North Carolina 6 times a year, on private land and public land. And it's been happening for 60 years. So what we're asking for is not inconsistent with that. And I also like to highlight that as part of the U.S. government's due diligence process, when they were awarding the contract or looking at an award for the contract, was to conduct an environmental assessment on our property. So we had an environmental team from the U.S. Army Installation Command come to our site, tour the site, viewed our site plan, and looked around. They were looking at impacts on the environment, such as on endangered species, on watersheds, on historic sites, and they also looked at noise and the impact of noise. And in their report that they completed in May of this year, that team determined that there was no, in quotes, it says, will have no effect on existing noise levels, as the site is next to a portion of McCall Army Airfield where noise levels routinely reach 60 to 65 decibels. So that's what the Army team discussed. So DGCI, again, we support the text amendment. We want to be good neighbors. We're willing to do whatever we can to mitigate any impact, because I understand, people have concerns that this is going to impact their quality of life. I think that has been overstated, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on that. One other impact on the county, if we were to be awarded this contract, and that contract is going to be coming around for solicitation again, I believe, is that there are hundreds of role players that must be hired to support this contract every year. I heard a gentleman earlier say that he didn't think that would be really of much advantage to the county, and it's true that there are some role players that have specific skills, but there are some role players that don't really require skills, but they're just going to be a guerrilla soldier on the battlefield running around. And we would look to Scotland County to hire some of those people. Actually, in this spring, after we received the pre-award notification, I met with Mark Ward from the Economic Development Corporation and Chris English from the Chamber of Commerce, and discussed having a job fair, and they were really supportive with that idea and offered to use their facility for that purpose. And we plan to carry on with that in the event that we are awarded the contract in the future. So I guess just to summarize, I would say that, from my perspective, DGCI, we've followed, all the procedures that we've been asked to follow by the county. I feel like we've been open and transparent from the beginning. I know there are a lot of complaints referencing intended activities, but I'm telling you that there's an exaggeration of the types of training that people are talking about. We're talking about noise, talking about smoke. I mean, there may be some smoke generated from our site from a handheld smoke grenade, which is a signaling device, but I would be shocked if it left the boundary of our property. Certainly, it's not going to go impact neighboring properties at all. I guess that's really all the comments that I have. I think I don't want to be redundant with the folks who've been there previously, and I've got a long night, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them at this point.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Owen? If not, we thank you, sir. We
Okay,
appreciate
thank you very
it.
much. Have a good evening.
I think he's,
Good evening.
good evening. Thank you, sir.
Kevin will tell you a little bit if you need anything from Fort Bragg.
Is that all of them? That's all the speakers?
Yes, sir. So if you close the public hearing.
All right, then, I will close the, need a motion, I don't know, just close the public hearing.
Does anyone have any clarifying questions of council?
I don't know, I moved it, he didn't say second. You want somebody to make a motion for that?
Well, before we make a motion, I'd like to make a suggestion. Hearing what we've heard from all these folks, and the biggest thing that I've heard out of it is the conditional use. And I would like to see us delay the vote on this for 1 week, at least meet back next Wednesday at 5:30 right here. And in the meantime, between now and then, sit down with a representative from Deercroft, a representative from the Scotland County Ministerial Alliance Churches. They all have questions about this conditional use thing.
But can't we plan for them to come before we had a meeting next Wednesday rather than have a sitting down with them?
No, that's what I'm saying. We will meet with these folks between now and next Wednesday. When we come together next Wednesday, all we'll do is vote yea or nay. I just feel like it would give the folks a chance, or us a chance, to clarify the reason this conditional use thing was left out. That's a suggestion. Any?
Well, I agree with that, and I'll add to it. I feel like I'm screaming, but I do want to be heard. I want everyone that's engaged in this issue, for or against it, to really believe that they can trust that we as a board have done due diligence to everything that we have heard and we have read. And I think the way to do that is for us to take a week, consume all this material, read it again, think about it, reach out to the HOA at Deercroft, reach out to the Ministerial Alliance, answer their questions, hear their concerns. I don't want anyone to think that we have not done our due diligence and honored our responsibility as county commissioners. I can say personally, I have been on the board for 10 years, and no one issue has consumed my time or my effort as much as this has. I have spent days on this subject, and I want the community to know that, because I think it's important that they know all of us have. So I'm with you 100%, Bob, and that would be a good way to proceed.
Totally agree. Anytime you have 100 signatures, we need to.
Well, I just think it would leave a better taste, you know, and I'll be right blunt, you know, y'all are gonna have to live with this. I got 2 more meetings and I'm gone. So y'all are gonna have to.
Are we in a position to give them what they want, though? Are we in a position to give them?
I know that, but whether I was gonna be here or not, I still think it's a smart thing to do.
I think anytime you have a public hearing with the volume of information that's been presented to us, to me, it's gonna take me a while to digest that. And I read all the stuff that was in the package, and I want to go back and reread a couple of things. And I guess in my mind, I want to get a better sense that not going with the conditional use permit is a good idea. So I'm not convinced that I know which direction we need to go right now. That's all.
I have a list of, should we lock ourselves into doing this next week? Seems to me we need to.
I mean, that was just a.
Say next week.
That was just a.
Okay, but, what I'm hearing from these folks, from this area, these signatures, they are not opposed completely. They want a conditional use permit. They want to understand what it is, and they want to be assured that the folks that come there are going to comply with it. That they want to be assured of that. Well, we need to listen to that and make sure that we communicate. We've already rezoned it, we approved that in 2018. So we've already done it. We just need to make sure now that we listen to both sides and do the best we can. I don't know what that is. I'm not with. I do.
Well, you've got.
I guess I'm going to slow here. I see one neighbor that doesn't want to come, and then you have a whole lot of neighbors here. And we need to really give some weight to these folks who not only for themselves, their livelihood, but even their animals, because you know how animals react to noise. And I can tell you again, don't let anybody tell you about the decibels. I've been trained in that. This is loud noise, it's loud than a truck. This is loud as any train coming through town and you were right there at it. It's that loud, okay? Because all this was rapid at one time. It wasn't you shoot pow, that's the sound. No, them grenades and I'm not a military person. But these folks have a legitimate concern. They have a right to be concerned because they know, many of them do. So I concur with you, Bob. Let's agree to sit down with these folks and come to the best decision that we can make. So we've already agreed that they could come. Now we have something we need to clean up.
Since we are limited in with the virus, coronavirus, and how many people can come before each other, I don't see whether it's really necessary to throw in the pastors and the minister. This is Mr. Gibson's part. That's his part. That's his group, and I can understand their general concern, but we needed to concentrate on the people from Deercroft area and not use up the space. Sometimes if we could have an auditorium, everybody come in, but we're limited into the number of people.
That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying take one person from the Deercroft community.
One?
Or two, one or two spokesmen, whoever's gonna speak.
He lives in Scotts Meadows.
Whoever, from Deercroft, whoever.
He doesn't sit at the table.
You representing though, John.
He ain't representing the folk up there.
No, he representing though. You can't describe him. He representing.
Okay. He lives there.
But whether it be any minister, they still represent.
I know, I was saying
What is
that
this group?
there's so many people that from this area are involved, you know, I was trying to make more space and opportunity for them to be heard, you know, and yeah, we respect the ministerial allowance and all that, but I was trying to make more room for people that's involved, you know.
The reason I said that, if we got a letter from them, and I think we need to recognize them. We've got a letter from, many letters from the folks at Deercroft. And you talk about Deercroft, but y'all know as well as I know, in and around that Deercroft area, there's a lot of black folks that live in that area. You know, it's not just strictly.
I didn't get a call for, but I got some residents that's still around.
That's exactly
Nobody
right.
from Deercroft called me at all.
That's right.
But the residents
That's
around
right.
that I represent me.
That's
They
exactly,
call.
that's exactly right.
And I have no problem with it.
My concern
I'm
for that
50-50.
is,
I'll tell you now, I'm 50-50.
any people from, that live on the South Carolina line can address the noise. If you're on a legal representative, you can't speak to your animal being terrified or your property value going down. And I'm saying, if you have room for that kind of representation, if we have it, but we can't ask him any questions about the noise, his animals, his property value.
Who?
BJ Gibson.
Oh.
He can't address that.
He's just a spokesperson.
That's what I was saying. Let's address the people that's involved. That's what I was saying. But it doesn't matter.
Well, going back to what Bob originally said, I think that time can be used better to educate a lot of people on more of what's actually going to happen.
That's right.
Right.
You know, because there's a lot of this stuff in Deercroft, and especially Mr. Owen's property. I mean, he's 600 feet away from Camp Call. We have no control what happens there. I guarantee you the stuff that goes on in Camp Call is going to be a whole lot worse than would ever be considered in this area. But I don't think people see that right now, you know.
Well, that's why I think we need to step back and
But John got a point, maybe we need more than a week. You know, they say we're going too fast, right?
well, I mean, I just, that's just a time frame I picked. I mean, I just out of the clear. Take 2 weeks or a month, put it off for our next
They say
meeting.
we're going too fast, so let's slow down
I mean,
and digest all this.
but don't vote on it until our next meeting. I mean,
Can I ask council?
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's what he's here
Take a
for.
look at our next meeting.
Chad.
How does that affect us on this? And also DCGI's permit that said they're willing to hold till October 1st.
Yeah, right, it's getting close.
I think they're two separate issues.
Yeah,
I
they are.
think they're two separate issues. I think this is, again, text change that will regulate these uses irrespective of what's going on in that. So I don't think they're really related. But I think it's whatever you guys feel comfortable with as far as timing.
But there's nothing time sensitive in the lawsuit that this is going to affect, is what I'm thinking. If we put it off to the first, whatever the date of the October meeting is.
When is that date?
First Monday, whatever it is.
October 6th.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there anything,
Do we harm you?
do we harm ourselves? Do we cost
If you're
ourselves?
asking for legal advice, that probably needs to happen in closed session. But I don't see the two issues as being, you take your time on what you need as it relates to this text change. I think they're.
But the statement was made earlier that DCGI has agreed not to do anything until October 1st. I don't think there's any motivation for them right now to do anything until this matter is settled. But am I guessing wrong on that?
Yes, as the representative indicated, they have agreed as a part of the appeal to the Board of Adjustment that they will not do anything until October 1. I imagine, I don't know whether they would extend that time period, but I think they would probably like to see how this all turns out before they, but, you know,
Are they
I can't answer
still,
that question because
are
I
they
don't.
still out there, any of them? Any of these people still out there?
I don't think so. Okay, so I just want to make sure that negatively affect that.
No, they have all left and gone home there.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, all right.
I'm sorry.
Who's waiting?
If he probably needs to come in here if they're gonna have a, Bob.
Hey, Bob, I think if there's a question, I think we should ask it.
Y'all, stay 6 feet apart, you come right in here. All of you. Y'all.
As long as it's not 125.
Is not anybody.
Yeah, DCI was here.
They want to get somebody else.
He's going to get one person. Just so we don't get more than 25 people in here.
Whoever can answer for the company, make the attorney.
Ms. Owens, do you want to share?
No, I'm good. I've been sitting down.
Me too.
Yeah.
Brief.
Now, what's the question?
Those two are too close together.
Y'all have said at one point in time that you were not gonna do anything until after October, is that correct?
That's right.
All right? It's the consensus of our board that since we have so many questions concerning some of the zoning things, that we want to meet with some of these folks and try to clear up any misunderstanding that might be out there with us and with this ordinance. So we are going to postpone any action, any voting until our meeting in October, and I think that's October 5th.
Okay.
And we are going to meet with the Homeowners Association in Deercroft and hear their concerns and the other folks that's concerned, to try and help them understand and help us understand what this zoning ordinance is all about.
Okay.
This text amendment, and I know the things that we hear, y'all hear the same thing we do. So we just want to do our due diligence to protect y'all and to protect the citizens of Deercroft and surrounding areas.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I
so
just,
we can extend that, from October and
Okay.
certainly allow to,
All right.
you know, for.
October 1st to at least.
Yeah, at least until, your next
yeah,
meeting, which is, you said, when?
Fifth.
October 5th. Yeah, so we
okay.
can,
All right.
absolutely, no problem at all.
Thank y'all.
And yeah, and we're happy to, you know, let some folks from Deercroft come to our place and give them a tour. We'll fire around there. They can see what they hear from their location. Happy to go.
I got a phone call on Friday from, I think, these two gentlemen,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And they made that offer. And I think, I don't know, but I would hope that people, if anybody who was interested, if you make that offer and we make it now with the virus, everybody can't get it. The representatives could meet and y'all do that demonstration with the firing on your property at the decibel level that you're not allowed to go over. And let the folks at your property see if they can hear it. And as well as the property owners as well.
Yeah.
I think that
I'm
was,
happy to.
I thought that was a good suggestion, guys.
Bill, that,
Yeah, that's,
okay. Then, all right, y'all happy with that?
Yes, sir.
And we will be in contact with the folks that, at the homeowners association and also y'all that live out there and that there's a horse farm. And I've got horses too, so. But anyway, we want to do what's right by all parties.
We have other folks who have sent us letters too,
We have.
that we also want to have part of that process. So that's.
And we thank y'all for being here and for coming, and we appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all.
Kevin, since we've had the public hearing tonight, we don't need any kind of motion to delay it, right? That's all I'm saying.
You would probably vote to table, table the vote.
Until.
Yeah.
Table
You don't,
any
you may not
action until-
necessarily need it, but it would probably be cleaner
I
if you
think
tabled the
I will make
vote
the
till
motion
October.
that we table this matter.
I second that motion.
Now, we'll make the motion to table this matter until our next regular scheduled meeting.
October 5th. Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those like sign. Okay. All right. And I would ask staff to contact the homeowners association and set up a time to meet with them and any other interested folks that, to try and clarify this resolution, and this is why some of it was left out.
Okay.
Is that agreeable with everybody?
It is.
All right, we've been here a long time, so let's put that one to sleep for the time being and move to Skyway Church property. Kevin?
We have had a request from Hemp Pharma, used to be Embrex. Scotland County owns just under 1 acre of land that is surrounded by their property. It was acquired by Scotland County as part of their original incentive. There was some type of contamination in the environmental study, so it was not transferred when the rest of it was transferred. Since
thank you.
They have come back in and they have requested that we transfer it because they've been using it as unpaved parking and they want to own it and use that property. This is very similar to the small piece of land that we wound up maintaining at FCC because of a car battery was buried there. But they have made an offer to buy the land for $2,500.
I look at the tax value, and the tax value is 19,000.
Yes, because it was looking at the land all around it is also that. So it's valued at the industrial value. And that's why we put in there that if they're going to do that, we would require, I would say that we would need it as part of a value, have it appraised. Now with this was land that Scotland County kept at Embrex's request because of contamination when we gave them the land as part of an incentive package. So, what is that, John?
I just thought that there was a huge difference between that. If it's not worth 19,000 and they're gonna come back and praise it too, then
And the only reason why it would be is because it's less than 1 acre, completely surrounded by another one. It's a value to them, but it's not a value to anyone else.
John, you got any problem with it? All right, what's the pleasure? We need to,
I make a motion that we sell that parcel to Pharma, $2,500.
I'll second.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
So,
Opposed, like sign.
so with that, we're assuming the motion is to surplus the property and accept the first bid. We will do an advertised upset bid, bringing back at the October meeting for final approval.
Okay.
Isn't that what I said?
That's exactly what you said. I have a mask on, it's hard to hear.
All right, James Street. Kevin?
Okay, this is the property across the street from the jail. We talked about last month. I did reach out to the owner, made the offer of $25,000 for the purchase of it. They came back with a counter of $30,000, which was the expected counter. So I'm bringing that back to the board with recommendation that we go ahead, honestly, close out one project. But that is that's the current value of, or that's the current counter that we had on the table. And if we went ahead and purchased that, we could go ahead and have public works crew come in and demolish the structure very quickly.
All right, need a motion one way or the other.
I moved it.
Have a motion that we purchase it for $30,000 and have a second.
Did he say 30 or 35?
30.
30.
30.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right,
The health department was going to be here. or was going to be online, but the health director had a situation come up that she was not able to attend. But you do have a written report from the health department coming in. One of the significant things on here, you will see an uptick in the number of cases Scotland County has had in the last, a significant uptick. A lot of those are through Scotland Correctional. The majority of our cases are actually there. And part of that is also because they are also bringing in patients in and out because that is also a dialysis center for the prison system. So that is still the vast majority of our active cases are either people confined or people working at Scotland Correctional. So until we actually get a vaccine, we're not going to hit a saturation point where we're going to see a decline in numbers anytime soon anyway. It's just the way it's going to
It's
work.
Scotland Correctional says it's coming from Robinson County, so, you know.
Yeah.
They're moving them in.
Yeah,
No,
so they're moving in from
Yeah.
other.
They're moving them in from all over the state.
Yeah.
And,
So, and of course, when you have 1,000 people who basically live, eat, and work together, one person gets sick, a lot of people get sick.
okay, all right.
Laurel Hill Community Center. Plans are changing a little bit with this. We did have we did have the RFQs coming in from 4 different companies for architectural services doing a site plan for the Laurel Hill Community Center. The 4 companies are Pinnacle Architecture, Locklear Jacobs, Oakley Collier, and Stogner Architecture. We have had dealings with each of these companies. Well, the county has had some dealings with each of these companies. Pinnacle, they've been involved in several of the school projects recently. Each of the 4 companies are qualified and capable of doing the job. The original intent was, because this came in Friday at 2:00, we did not have opportunity to sit down and go off and do a full assessment on these, or is expecting to go off and recess till later, till next week, and being able to come back with a full recommendation. But with that, honestly, all 4 of these companies could easily do the job. None of them are from Scotland County. Stogner is Richmond County. Locklear and Jacobs, they are Robinson County. Pinnacle is Cumberland County, or that is one of their offices, I believe. And Oakley Collier, they are Rocky Mount, though they have multiple offices in that state as well.
So what you opened on Friday were,
We just received the bids by a 2:00 deadline.
okay, and so you didn't have an opportunity because of everything else going on to have that ready for tonight.
Right, we just did not go through, and we were going to look at them and try to rank and determine, come back in with a recommendation.
But I guess I would hate to see us have to wait 4 weeks before we make that award. Can we do it without us being together, or can we recess this to whatever time you think you're going to be able to come back with that recommendation?
We can come back in,
That's a month off.
That's a month loss there.
you can recess, I already had plans to recess till next week anyway, so you can do that, or you can authorize me to engage one of these companies and notify you of the selection process for the pre-bid.
Well, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, that we can trust your judgment.
Would we have to go with a low bid?
This is not a bid, this is a qualification.
Okay.
And you've worked most of these, haven't you?
I've worked with all of them except Pinnacle. The school systems have worked with Pinnacle, and they're satisfied with Pinnacle. So
I'm sorry, there.
the school system is satisfied with Pinnacle. I've had active projects with Locklear and Jacobs and with Stockton.
Who's the capital committee?
Uh,
Or the,
We are, me
And,
and, Bob, and,
And-
who else?
don't y'all make
Yeah.
decisions in regard to properties and building stuff and repairing stuff?
They make recommend,
Yeah.
yeah.
You are now.
I've heard of it.
I thought you was on the capital committee.
It's been a while since that group's
It's
met.
been so long since we've met, you
We
forgot.
had three people, we lost somebody, somebody's gone. Who
Uh,
we lose?
They do make recommend, they
Guy-
don't make
Guy was
decisions,
on
but they
it.
make
Guy was on
recommendations.
it.
We
That's
assumed
what
that
it
you
is.
took his place, but we've not met since then.
Yeah, okay.
Well, maybe that's the wrong group, but I
I think that's a good idea. I mean, yeah.
If you would like to do that, rather than having the full board meet again, we could go off and you could for this situation, authorize me to execute an agreement with consulting with the capital committee.
is there, I mean, I make that motion.
Cause you got a lot of information from each one of them according to the paperwork, right?
Yes, I
They
have.
sent a part of information, so you got a lot of information from each one. Where they what they trying to be
I'm
doing
content
all
with him
that.
making the decision, I just don't know that that's fair to him.
You got.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a
Second the
motion,
emotion.
motion and a second. Any discussion?
And the motion is for capital committee to meet.
Right, with Kevin and,
What's the
Kevin,
motion?
the motion was for Kevin to make a recommendation to the capital committee, and if they agree with his recommendation, that's
Bring it
to
to-
go forward at that point.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
Sound good?
heard the motion and the second. All in favor, let it be known saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay,
And I would hope that that decision be made.
next
This
week, because we need to get moving on that.
Okay, I was thinking we'd probably try to, hopefully meet Thursday, Friday of this week or the first of next week.
Next week, cause I can't meet this week.
Okay, next week then.
Any day,
2 days already.
Okay.
any day, Tuesday's fine after lunch.
We do have a request that came in from the school system. The South Johnston School is coming in, finalizing under budget. We have not paid out, we have not done a final accounting on it because we still have some supplies, some equipment that's being purchased. I just authorized a purchase for playground equipment last week. So finance cannot tell me what the absolute final number is, but the school system is requesting the use of the contingency funds that are available for the construction of a multi-purpose building that would be out at the high school. They would primarily be using it for their JR OTC program.
So when do you think that should we wait till everything is finished? Financially, budget wise, before we go on and say, hey, look, should we go on and agree, decide on that?
Right now, this would be an easy opportunity to go off and say, yes, you're supportive or you're against the proposal, but we will not have a final dollar until probably the October meeting anyway. But this would advise the school whether or not you're favorable on it before we have the final numbers.
I feel they got the money, go for it. I mean, they can afford to do it. I think, the purpose for which they're doing it is good.
But no county funds would be added to it, I think, is what Betty's getting to.
Correct. These would be bond proceeds that were originally slated to go for the construction of South Johnson School.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I think we don't have any idea how much money we're talking about.
I don't have a final number to give you. They didn't give an estimate, and I'm not sure what the number that we have as a remainder is going to change. So until we make sure that we have all the invoices in, just.
If they've got $500,000 left.
That's what
I've got a different opinion.
Yeah.
If they've got $35,000 and they can build what they're doing for that, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, they're maybe not to exceed a dollar amount, I don't know.
And they did not submit, they submitted the drawings, but they did not submit the cost estimate. And that could be something I can easily push back to them asking for their cost estimate.
I'd like to see us do that and find out, how much money they're talking about.
I'm proud of them that it came in under budget, but I don't think that necessarily means to get.
Spend all of it.
It's not a great market.
Okay, well,
We'll get more information and hopefully we'll be able to be in a position where we can close out the other accounting on it as well.
okay.
Historic property.
Historic properties, Carol?
Since nobody can hear me, the reason this is being brought to you, 5 or 6 years ago, the Historic Properties Commission came before the Board of Commissioners and asked for a alcohol policy so that events at the John Boone grounds or at historic properties, that the sale and consumption of beer and wine would be allowed. It has come to the attention of historic properties that with weddings being held there, and there is a application for a very large wedding to be held there in October, COVID will determine the final outcome of that. But that application has indicated they wanted to serve, I guess what you call hard liquor, that's the way I know how to put it. And we know that there are multiple weddings that are held there, small and large. So the board felt like they needed to have their policy revised to include the sale or consumption of beer, wine, and spirits in their alcohol policy. So the policy was forwarded to Mayor Johnston for his review and his recommendations and what he felt like was appropriate for us to adopt this policy. I'm going to take your attention to rules for the use and/or sale of alcohol. And what Mr. Johnston did in the policy was really he bears the responsibility of all this on the renter and not historic property. It also requires a $1 million alcohol liquor rider for any event that has over 200 people, so that they would be liable for any thing that would create an issue, and that they would be responsible for that. So this just spells out all the conditions and permitting that has to be done for any private or public event to have something at the John Boone grounds and have beer, wine, and hard liquor. Tim, you want to add to that? You've been part of that conversation.
And you pretty well covered it. I mean, I think the one thing that he did add in there is that it's all on them to get their one special permit and all that good stuff. But the one thing he added in there that they had to be an off-duty police officer hired and be there and paid by the group during the time they're doing it. So.
And then also, if the group is really, really large, historic properties has the ability to increase it from one off-duty officer to 2 or 3, depending on how large the group is. So that is new in the policy.
I didn't read all of it. I guess I did read it, but I didn't notice in there if there's any damage, would the renter be responsible for repairing? Is it in there?
Well, that's in the general
Okay.
rental.
Okay.
Yeah, that This was just on the alcohol.
This is just alcohol,
They have to
okay.
have the responsibility for that.
So, this is for your, consideration tonight. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, but Ed did go through it, and, this is what, he deemed as appropriate for our needs
So,
in order to have.
so Ed did pass on it?
Yes,
Okay.
he did give a pass on that.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I will make a motion that we approve the Scotland County Historic Properties Commission alcohol policy.
Second.
I heard the motion, have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it sound, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
I don't have any comment about the policy that I think your application, you got, there's not, I don't think you need to also add a review, but I acknowledge that you can't sort of be that in the policy. You don't have to-
Okay. Well, you do two applications. Okay, I'll make that. Okay.
I think it's good, that would, want them to have that.
Boards and committees.
Okay.
We do have, 3 individuals to be, appointed and reappointed to the Library Board of Directors, Ms. Kyle Bethel, Ms. Phyllis D. Edwards, and Mrs. Carol Gaskell. Have all applied to be appointed or reappointed to the Library Board of Directors. So I will make a motion to approve those 3 individuals.
A second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Clarence had a question.
On that term limits,
We're fortunate to get people to serve.
no, is that term limits? That's the question.
I'm not sure, I'll be honest.
And you find out that that's a,
I
what
know.
you want to serve?
I
You ain't
know.
give nobody else in the county the opportunity to serve. Get term limits, you gotta do it, like we do all boards.
That is true, but every time one come up, they wanna come back again and again and again, so I
And be
like.
life on there.
I'll get an
This right.
answer, I'll get an answer to your question. It's a good question, but let me put one back to you. If we have term limits and they can't be reappointed and nobody applies, we end up with empty boards. I
As long
know.
as you put it out there, it's.
Okay, I'll
From-
find out the
Well,
answer.
there's some that are
Be
more
fair, we gotta
popular
be
than
fair with
others.
this thing now.
We've got that problem on our list.
I mean, we gotta be fair.
Okay.
From what I remember, we do have a policy that is basically unless there's, not applying for a commissioner being appointed to a board. There is a 2-term limit, assuming there is someone else who has applied. So if it has been a situation where there's no other application that's been there, and also if there are certain positions, such as like the Board of Health, where there are very specific requirements, there has to be an applicant that would meet those requirements to do that. But yes, we do have term limits.
Just don't. What about on this one though, Kevin? Apply. Yeah, what about on this particular one you vote?
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
The health-
that is-
on The library, there's term limits on all of them.
All of them say.
Those are the guidelines that the board passed.
8 years.
I see it. I know.
Are all these reappointments?
2, it looks like 2 1 is new, 2 is reappointment.
Yeah.
And this is a board that I know librarian has actually had significant difficulty in just getting people to a meeting.
Is this fill the board?
I don't know.
Well,
Got any-
I understand Mr. McFadden's question there, but could we just move ahead with the one new person and then look at the rules for the others?
We just don't have application.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we got trouble with people.
And we do have that problem in a number of,
You're gonna have the same problem with the health board. There's 4 seats coming up. And, I think there's one person that has said they would like to be reappointed.
You have it on historic property, getting people served,
But,
and we, have month after month, and we worked hard, and we got our boards filled, but unfortunately, the same people we won't serve, we don't get new applicants, and, Parks and Rec has done well in getting new applicants, that one board that has for summertime, so. I'm just gonna know whatever the vision for it.
I think as a commission, we have to work harder. Definitely talking about myself, I've called people asking with this several boards and things, and we just gonna have to create more interest among the populace, population of people. They just don't seem, maybe the way we're doing is not good enough, but I suggest we go and use all 3 of them this time. And I'll go and fill his board, and then we certainly will take a harder look at people that have served long term from now on.
All right, so then,
Where is it saying in here, after your term is up, you have to seek, you don't even have to seek for being reappointment. You can't be. I'm saying, how's it gonna be fair to anybody else? You got a vacancy.
It probably says it in the bylaws, doesn't it?
So it must not.
These are volunteers, but nobody volunteers, then that's what we can do. And what's happening to us in Scotland County is that we're aging and there are not new people, coming into government and willing to serve. On the boards I serve on, we have to postpone meetings because we are down in Council of Government, we are all senior citizens, very senior. Okay, everybody on the board, and you can't get replacement. We have to postpone meetings because we can't get a quorum. So,
all right,
I see where it's coming from, we need to do something, but
Well, this is something we need to talk about in our retreat, ways that we can try to motivate.
all right, the motion was then is you're gonna reappoint Kyle Bethel, Phyllis Edwards, and Carol Caskell to the Scotland County Memorial Library Board. We had a motion. Carol made that motion, had a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay. All right, Kevin?
all right, Sneed's Grove Convenience Site, finally reopened. Even before, the day after, or the first day it was open, I went by there. We specifically did not advertise it. So when I when I was there and wound up talking with somebody for about 45 minutes, there were only about 5 cars that came through unloading stuff. So it is open there. We will be looking at replacing the compactors at the Wagram and the Palmer Road sites. They have been ordered. Once they come in, we will remove the compactors, replace the existing concrete, put them back in. It will probably take about a week to 10 days on each site to get that done, concrete cured and everything. The sites will remain open. They will not have a compactor for that period of time. It will be basically using a roll-off bin. But the sites will remain open.
Can I ask you a question while you're on convenience sites
Yes,
that has nothing to do with that?
Okay.
What in the world is going on about this cat you're calling me about? I don't even know which one it's at, but it's at one of these convenience.
Is what now?
A cat.
A cat, yeah.
I know about
Have
the
you
cat.
heard about the cat?
Yes, I've heard about the cat.
I know about
You talking about a cat that had rabies?
No, he's been vaccinated. Which site are they talking about it at?
Livingston.
There's one that stays at Livingston Court all the time.
That's the one they're talking about. And somebody apparently has gotten word that they're gonna take the cat away from there. And he's been fixed, anyway, I didn't know if somebody. how that got
One
started.
of the guard, I started having a conversation with somebody from Public Works. They were asking me about it. I had no idea. I was going in a completely different direction than they were. But ultimately, one of the guards who works there ultimately has a pet cat that he keeps on site.
The cat causing a problem.
No more than anything else, but basically.
Squirrel or rabbit.
Don't worry about it.
And so basically, we don't bring pets to work.
I've literally got no calls about that. I got about so many.
That is sad.
I mean, I have an email.
Stand for a minute, sorry, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was worried about.
I just have to stand. I can't sit.
I couldn't even get out of which site it was, but I'm sorry, I didn't,
Yeah.
I just thought that was a good place.
Yeah.
No, talking about cats, there has been a rabies case in the county.
But that cat's been vaccinated.
Yeah, I know. Belongs to the first sergeant.
Yeah. That cat is basically, it's a pet that lets roam after dark because the guy can't take it home.
All right.
Complex parking lot actually opened today. So the complex parking is finished. The Monument Committee, we did get Bill Loftus. A number of you may know him from St. Andrews. Bill Loftus.
LOFTUS.
He has agreed to act as facilitator for the Monument Committee.
LOFTUS.
So we're working now to schedule a meeting with him and the chairman so they can get their organizational meeting so they can start the actual meetings for the Monument Committee. Because part of it, as I discussed with Dr. Loftus, was that we needed a facilitator because I did not want to sit back and try to run that meeting. Because it needed to be, that committee needed to stand on itself. The county will facilitate, will provide resources as needed, but the committee would operate on its own, and then come back with a recommendation
I think
to
it's a
this
very
body.
smart move, Kelvin. Very
So,
smart move. So many people, it's your idea, Bob said it was his idea.
I'll give it to him. The radio tower, all the radios have been switched over. They are now broadcasting off of the new tower. They are looking to schedule the removal of the old tower, so currently both of them are up there. And we are currently in discussions with the city of Laurinburg about moving a auxiliary repeater to the water tower by the EDC building, on the north side of Laurinburg. The fire department has a fire repeater on it, and they were getting excellent reception in the north end of the county, according to them, before the new tower went up and was operational. So that is just something else we are looking to consider. We are working on now, in addition to the new tower. The new tower final switchover was within the last 10 days, so we'll be getting more information as to exactly what all the total benefits are going to be.
That's that man's name.
The last item was we were requested by the chair following the letter from the NAACP. So we were requested to come up with a draft resolution dealing with diversity and tolerance. The language that we assembled languages from resolutions from the state and from other local governmental organizations to go off and deal directly with statement of tolerance and civic dignity, basically.
Trying to find it. Where is it? Oh, you got your phone. What I do?
All right, you've seen the draft, had a copy in your packet. Any discussion on it?
Yes.
Yep.
That's so vague and anyone reading that won't know what it's talking about.
Okay.
When you say diversity, tolerance to be celebrated and practiced each and every day by citizens. The issue before us has had nothing to do with citizens. Am I correct?
Well, I.
We need to face this head on and not.
It's kind of
go around
general. It is kind of
That's
general, you know, but.
That's saying citizens. This was not brought on by citizens. We're talking about the general population. I'm just saying that.
Now, why was it brought on by citizens? Like, who brought it to our attention? The NAACP is a citizen.
No, you're missing my point.
Well,
He's saying
fill
that
me in on it.
it's
Well,
not.
Let me speak, I can speak for myself, and then I can speak for yourself. I just saluted this flag, and I concluded by saying, liberty and justice for all. And I believe in addressing an issue, not going around it. The issue we have here is the statement that was made concerning a noose. That's not citizens. And here's what I would recommend to the board, that we look at our policy as it relates to our oath of office. I swore, I put my hands on the Bible, some affirm that we would uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and that we wouldn't do anything inconsistent therewith. Am I correct?
You're correct.
That's our oath of office. To correct this, the Board of Commissioners, in my opinion, should redo its policies as it relates to the appointment to boards and committees. Anyone serving at our pleasure, not elected, have nothing to do with elected folk. Anyone serving at our pleasure would have to uphold our oath of office because they're doing a service to this county that we would otherwise be doing. Therefore, our oath of office is in place and they have to uphold that. If they say or do anything inconsistent thereof, we are responsible because we placed them there. So what I would suggest is that our policy be updated to say anyone who does that disqualifies himself or herself, regardless of race, creed, or color, from serving on a board or a committee because you have violated our oath of office. If you say you would provide a tree or a noose, that is vigilante justice. We just saluted the flag by saying liberty and justice for all. And that's under the law. So for us to be true to our oath of office, we have to do that. Otherwise, this He's not addressing the issue, and it's not gonna satisfy the public.
Well, I certainly.
And probably nothing will satisfy them, because that's not what we're about. We're about serving as best we can. But that's what I would recommend to this board.
Should that become a motion?
Question.
That's what I'm recommending, but.
Well, now, you,
This draft, hold on, Kevin, Rob, and Jason, this
Do what
draft
now?
was written up, what purpose? Why did this even come to the table tonight?
well, we were asked by the NAACP
Right.
because of,
But it include boards, it include a commissioner,
well,
but this is all, they don't even address that. I got the
well, if, the only reason that that I asked Kevin to do that is to prevent hopefully something like this from happening again. I got no control over this. What's happened has happened. There's nothing we can do about it. But if we could put something in place that says to each commissioner, this is taboo. I'm not into social media and all that mess. I could care less about social media. But that was my intent, just keep it from happening again, if we could.
But he's saying that this doesn't address.
Keeping it from happening again.
He said this really
That's
does
what
not
we're saying.
address.
That's why,
the subject.
You can't keep it from happening again.
that's why it's a draft. I mean,
We can't keep it from happening again.
no,
All thing we can do is as elected officials, is just say that.
well, do you want to send it to the policy?
We won't tolerate it.
Well, do you want to send it to the policy committee and let them come up with a policy?
Yes.
That's what he suggested.
Okay, well, that's,
When that addresses.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
And if the board doesn't accept whatever recommendation, then we done with it.
that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I think that John is correct. If we tolerate this, on our board of commissioners, we are not being true to our own oath. And when the NAACP asks us, well, what happened? Oh, we wrote this, I think the person that did it did a good job in providing us a resolution, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the issue. You see what I'm saying, what we're saying?
That's, I mean,
And they're gonna look at this and say, well, this is a beautiful thing that y'all got a great philosophy for being commissioners, but this doesn't really say, whatever. But,
Band-Aid on it. That's all they're doing, putting the Band-Aid.
but I'm gonna say this, and Commissioner Ivy, when it was read to me on the phone, your comments were very disturbing and very painful. And it could be that I'm a Black American and I was born and raised in a segregated Jim Crow South. And the cruel experiences shared with me by parents, grandparents, or whatever, and the history itself made your comments horrible and dehumanizing. And I was really disappointed. And so it may be that you may not be familiar so much with the history of our people. And I would suggest that maybe you can do some study, investigate, and read up on some of the struggles that we have experienced as people, and you understand why we feel that way. Me and John and Clarence Clarence didn't say anything about it. I said, John, I feel that way because we've been there and done that. I've been scared in my life. You see what I'm saying? And when my parents told me about the KKK coming at night, it was scary as a child. So this is why it's not that we dislike you or trying to hurt you, but this is what our experience have been. And I admire John's bravery in saying this.
Well, you know what, and I agree with you, and you know that, we talked 1,000 times.
I love you guys.
But I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm stepping outside of the role of being on the front end of this issue and looking at the back end of the issue. This as weak as branch water. And I don't know how else to say it, because I don't think it answers what they're saying. But with that said, and what Ms. Golston said, when I posted what I posted that day, it had nothing to do about any kind of race or anything. It had to do about an execution of a 5-year-old child. 2 days later, it happened in Somerville, South Carolina, to a young 5-year-old child down there, one in Raleigh. And you know, it's just.
But why would you go outside the law though? We got a law to protect that.
I didn't say go outside the law. And I never said go around the due process. Everybody has put that in there, but I haven't said it. So, you know, but I agree with you. But that was a heated, I'm tired of seeing it. And whatever it takes for us to stop it happening, then we need to do. If we don't, we're part of the problem. But now, that don't address that. So,
And this is all, what I'm saying is, I recall when the young man went into the church in Charleston and he shot 9 people in church and killed them. When the police arrested him, he woke him up, said he was hungry, and that policeman took him to McDonald's and bought him some food. I know that everybody can't act like that, but that's the way it should be. Even though he had committed these crimes, this is America. He has to be treated as an American, and he was. And we want to see the same thing extended to everybody who breaks the law. They should be tried in the streets. And I know how passionate you feel about anybody being shot. I feel the same way. But we can't say that because it's a violation of our oath. That's called vigilante justice, and that's unconstitutional. And that's what I'm addressing. I know at the heat of the moment, we'll say things, but as elected officials, we have to uphold our oath of office. We swear that we won't do it or say, we'll uphold the Constitution. And vigilante justice is unconstitutional. Therefore, as elected official, I cannot say you ought to hang him. That's outside of the law. I feel that. I really feel that.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying.
I follow your thought process.
Yeah.
But I never said anything about going outside of due process or anything. I'm just saying.
But when you said.
I'm trying to make a point of, if we don't stop these 5-year-old children from getting executed, then shame on everybody.
Well, what
But what are you gonna say to them?
I don't say this one thing on, then I won't say I'm through, it's time to go home. But when an elected official suggests or states in any way that someone should be hanged, when that flame the fire of other folk, they'll carry it out. That's what's happening as I speak right now. Our president, I love the guy, everybody, I love him. But he flames the fire by saying certain things, then he'll come back and say, well, I didn't say that. But we are seeing vigilante justice carried out in the streets and other places. They're burning up people's buildings and they're killing people. And Tim, when you said, I'll provide the tree, that's outside of the law. And I know you're a good man. You're a good man. But that's where the problem comes in. You said you would provide the tree if the other guy wouldn't provide the noose. That's vigilante justice. That's unconstitutional. And I don't believe he meant that. And maybe you did. You said, it's got to stop. But it can't stop with lawlessness. My granddaddy witnessed a hanging in Dillon, in Dennisville, South Carolina. He died in 87, so it ain't been a long time ago. that he shared that story with me. And that's bad.
There were 2 million
You know.
homes in, was it North Carolina?
He
Back
was
here,
hanged
first
out
of the
there.
year.
He witnessed that. He shared with me what that meant to him. So I'm just saying, no matter how passionate we feel about what's going on, we cannot go outside the law, even casually, as elected officials, because others follow us. They do follow us. They believe in us, and they care about us. And I want to say this to my friend Tim. This doesn't change how I feel about the company. I think with the mistake you made, I feel nothing will change.
Well, let me say this draft came from, most of it, from the School of Government. So, I mean, there's, you know, that's basically where, but my intent was to send this along with whatever else to the policy committee and come up with a policy that would address the social media. Social media, to me, is one of the worst things that ever happened. Now, people love it to death, but
I agree with you.
but maybe it's probably me because I ain't smart enough to know how to use it, but
But yeah, it's an opportunity for people to express themselves and, but as you said, and I had, John, kept talking, so he said some very good things. But as county commissioners, I don't go on it because I'm afraid that I'll say something that will conflict with some of the information that goes on in our meeting. You end up in a conversation with somebody and come out with something you don't need to come out with. So I don't go to social media. And my family laughs at me in a way, some of them do by not doing it, but I don't. Can we go home?
Yeah, we can. We ain't gonna beat up on our friends here now. We can beat up on-
Well, he knows that we
Just
like
like we talked to
him.
the
Tim knows that, but Tim
Well,
will
I
figure
think,
out how
I
you
think
gonna.
they deserve an answer. I think they deserve an answer.
But I think you need
And I
to
think-
apologize to somebody, Tim,
A
and
lot
I'll
of
be
that
honest with
answer
you.
needs to, you know, maybe that answer is word for word what John said. I don't know. But I'm telling you, I just can't.
It's bad out there, Tim. It's
It
bad.
ain't lying.
It's bad.
It's bad out there, Tim, but what are you gonna do, NAACP? Are you gonna apologize?
No,
Okay.
because if I do,
Okay, if you say you're not gonna apologize.
I grew up in Scotland County all my life. I mean, all my life. I was raised by an undereducated black woman. She taught me one thing. She taught me not to hate, love everybody. And I would keep that, I just give that to my children. Not to hate everybody. When I see stuff like riotings, other towns, I'll be hoping they don't come to Scotland County, because that is
I do
not
too.
what I'm about. I'm not about that. I won't never express that to anybody. How I feel. If I hate somebody, I keep it in my heart. I won't keep it in my heart, because I won't be here a while, but I'll take it out. You know, go to see for healings.
Right, I agree, Frank.
But it just, ain't no place, I don't see as a place for Scotland County, because I know what, I gave up Atlanta. I consider Atlanta hot now, they call it. Be, you know, with opportunities that, I gave it up to come back, you know, and be productive in my town. All friends of mine go out, better jobs, whatever, making money, what we call making, living the American dream. But I gave it up to come back to Scotland County to be productive in my hometown. So when they come back, I would say, hey man, we could do the same thing home, what you're doing in Atlanta, doing in DC. But that's why I came back here. And I want to be protected, be productive in my community. But Lord forbid, I hate to see that rising. Well, you know, even if Black Matters statement, word and language, you know, all life matter to me. All life matter to me. Because I don't look at people like that. I deal with death and you see it, and I'm working with it. And heaven, but I didn't choose that profession. God chose me. I tell anybody, this here is something I chose. The elected official, and the people chose. You know, people don't want me no more. Take it away from me. But God chose a profession for me. And it's not, I don't see that. You know, I just can't be a part of taking you think it takes somebody's life. You know, that.
Well, I think each one of us, Clarence, as commissioners, are looked at and held to a different standard than the average citizen walking down the street. They look to us for guidance and that kind of stuff. And I've been here for 12 years, and I feel like I've made a contribution, and it breaks my heart to see the diversity that's coming in our community. It didn't used to be that way. I know John and I.
We have two commissioners that have not spoken. I like to hear what they say.
All right,
This time we recess it, I'm getting sleepy.
Well, let me just, I think the crime that was committed was undoubtedly heinous, reprehensible in every way that we can imagine. But I do believe that words matter. And what I would say is that, Tim, if you had said, put him away where the sun don't shine, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. If you had said, lock him up and throw away the key, that would have been the end of it. If you had said, this is why I support capital punishment, nobody would have had a question about anything that you had said. But words matter, and when you were issued when words are like hanging and a tree, that does speak to the history of vigilante justice, which is unlawful, which is what we have to be mindful of as elected officials. So therefore, there's the two issues. There's the race issue that can be perceived for what you said, and then there's the unlawful issue. And we have to balance them out, and that's what I have struggled with since this whole issue came about. And I do think that we've been asked to make a response to the NAACP. A very eloquent letter was sent to us, and they did not inflame the situation. They did not use race in their letter. They talked about our community and being united. So I think it is
Very nice letter.
I think that we are bound to respond to them in a way that is appropriate. So if it wants to come to the policy committee for us to look at this draft and see how we need to make it something that we all agree on, I think that's the way to go.
Well, one correction in that statement, Carol. The letter from the NAACP did bring the racism. They did say an African-American man and a Caucasian child. I did not bring that. When I posted that, I didn't even know that.
Well,
So, but they, make that correction. Now, that was not brought in by me. So,
Perception is.
But when you talk about hanging in a tree, that doesn't, in my mind, as Carol McCall sitting here, I don't leave much doubt as to what it is. And it's unlawful. Whether you're hanging, no matter who it is that's being hung, it is unlawful to talk that way. So like I said, if you had said, put him away for life, okay. So I just think that, for us to respond and maybe listen to what John has to say, maybe it needs to come to the policy committee if that's the consensus of the board.
We didn't hear from you, Whit.
Well, I have wrestled with this a good bit, very honestly, and I actually wrote down some stuff to say, but I don't think that's what I'm gonna do. I felt like I've tried, and the older I get and the more I tend to increase my faith, I don't really believe it's my right or what God intends me to do to judge the character of the gentleman sitting beside me. When I heard it, when I saw what was written, I was disappointed because I thought it would be perceived as with racial overtones. And I was disappointed because I've not known Tim long, but I've not seen anything indicative of that from him. And so I choose to believe it was, what the comment was just made
That doesn't excuse it, it just means that it wasn't an intentional act of racism. But I also believe, and that our community, we have the comment that Bob said a minute ago, and after you used the word diversity, I think you may have been speaking of divisiveness.
Devices, I said diversity.
What I see in our country is everybody trying to drive wedges and throw rocks, when I think that most of us in this room generally like to build bridges. We have a great community here. We've had good leaders that are African American, that are white, that are Indian in this community. We've had, on all of the boards, the school system, county commissioner, city of Warrenburg, chief of police, chairman of the county commissioners. We've had great diversity in all of these positions. And what bothers me some is that we get caught up in some things when we've got an opportunity in this country right now, because I think there is an appreciation of the disadvantage that minorities have been through for a long time. I heard a sportscaster this weekend, and he said, this isn't going to change until the people who aren't impacted by it are just as offended as the ones who are. And I think we're closer to that in this country than maybe we've ever been.
Well, I'll tell you.
So I hope, if maybe just I hope that this conversation will lead to greater appreciation of what we say and the impact it has on others. And maybe what we need to do, because I do think Tim's point, I thought it was great that he made it. This draft is like,
It's like water. It ain't worth
it's just, it's not sufficient.
This draft.
And I think what we need to do is,
Nice.
what I would suggest, and this I think is what John said.
I will say this.
Is to go to the policy committee or if we're gonna do a resolution, it needs to be stronger and it needs to be more pertinent, and it needs to be not resolution, but a policy.
Well, I think it ought to be a policy, and I think it ought to be strong. And I think it ought to.
Well, that's why I said what I said about it. If getting my role in this whole thing, if I were the NAACP, that don't satisfy my letter. And so you do what you want from there, but I mean, I wouldn't be happy with that either. So,
Well, you mentioned the unrest in society today. You may not understand that there are people in this country, now, Lawrenceburg, Scotland County is a wonderful place to live, but racism still exists here in Scotland County. People certainly have not been treated fairly. And for the first time in the history of man in the United States, white other races are seeing how the black race has been treated through all these 400 years, and they decided to march for justice. So I'm proud of the marching. I'm proud of the protesting. For once in our lives, we got some help. The Jordan Lewis of the world now has some help, and that help is a white man. He sees the injustice. So we can close our eyes and say, oh, Scotland County is the most beautiful place in the world. Everybody is treated fair and just. That ain't exactly right.
Penny, I worked for the court system for 30 years.
But you say, Scotland County is a wonderful place to live. But we have issues here too. And you have to understand we do have issues here.
I understand that. I believe that.
I believe it every day.
But I also believe we have the ability to deal with those issues.
But but we have to admit that there is a problem for they don't, they can work on it. Are we about ready to?
There is a problem, but I hope with a policy committee that, and I don't know how you could do it, whether it be strong enough, but there ought to be something in that policy that says if you do thus and so, that you violate your code or your oath of office, then you ought to resign. I mean, that's the way I feel about it.
That's from a committee of board, not from the.
And I had some friends tell me the exact same words.
I mean, I feel that, and I'm not talking about, I'm just.
Mr. Chairman, I do think that if we're going to refer this to the policy committee for whatever action, that it is appropriate for you as the chairman to write to Mr. Dyson.
I will.
And tell him about this discussion, and that we felt like what we had intended to do or planned to do was not sufficient response to his letter.
I will. I talked to Herman.
Good idea.
And we online?
Hmm.
Are we still online?
Are we still out on the line, Kevin? Yeah, we are.
But I still think his letter was appropriate.
Right.
And we needed a written response to that.
Right, I understand.
I will do that. Lord's willing and the creek don't rise.
It keeps raining, it's gonna rise, it's supposed to rain a
I
lot
know
coming
it
up.
Do we need a motion to refer this to the policy committee or just by consensus?
Let's make a motion,
Let's-
so
So we'll have it in the record book that we,
make your motion,
I
John.
move that this issue be referred to our policy committee, and the policy committee will make a recommendation back to the board.
a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay.
Motion to accept.
Can, or will you get with me on this capital committee whenever you want it to be?
Right.
Actually, y'all can adjourn.
No, we're not gonna recess. We're gonna adjourn because we were, what we were gonna recess to has been moved to
Oh, okay.
our next meeting. So I guess we've all had our county commissioner news. Nobody else has anything else to add, or do you, anybody?
I save my report to where I got my mental energy, I don't have any no night.
I did 5 seconds. In January, February, I told you I attended a wonderful birthday party for Gertrude Ingram, who is 100 years old. I am sad to report that she died the last couple of weeks.
You did.
She was one of my church members.
You did, sir.
That is awesome. One play.
You,
She was a member of Solid Rock.
She was 100 years old.
100 years old.
Then before her, Miss Olabelle Morris was 104 years old. I married her.
Did you Miss Gertrude?
Yep, both of them. Both of them had a part raising me. They were raising me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I found out one of my best friends, is 100 years old now, and she still driving.
Sure, I gotta go off that spot.
You want a motion to adjourn, sir?
yeah, we want to adjourn. John's already made a motion. Second. All in favor, let it be known saying aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all.
You know, I hate to still drive a C-line too.
I said, word. She got all her back. She got this back.